This time we're going to go ahead and we're going to call to order the Burke County Board of Adjustment meeting for August the 11th, 2020. Good afternoon and welcome everybody. Glad to have you here. If you'll come on in, have a seat. I'll be with you just momentarily. This time I'm going to go ahead and ask staff to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Kirkland. This time I'd like to turn the board's attention to the minutes from our previous meeting of July the 14th. Are there any questions, concerns, corrections that need to be made to that? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
We accept the minutes as presented.
I'll make that motion to approve minutes of July 14, 2020.
Second. Oh yeah, I make a motion that we accept it.
Jenny, Robert made the motion, I think, before you did. Do you second it? Jenny, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Robert made the motion before you did. Do you second it?
Okay.
All right. All those in favor? So moved. The minutes are accepted. This time I want to turn your attention to the first item on our agenda, which is SUP 2020-10, which is a request for a special use permit for alterations and extended use and course activity of a commercial motocross track as conditionally approved in 2019. This property is addressed as 2748 Enola Road, PIN number 27107324880 of Burke County. Frank Mace is the applicant. This time we'll go ahead and we'll hear from our planning department. There will be probably extensive comments to this, board members. Are we in agreement to hold our questions until everyone has presented so we can get a better overview of the situation? Of course, if we have a question that arises, I understand that we may feel a need there. If you'll write those down and we can ask those as we go through. Mr. Kirkley, do we need to go ahead and swear everybody in, or have you already done that?
That is correct. So what I was speaking with our clerk there about, what we have in the auditorium here is what has arrived leading up. Deputy Marler is in the lobby should someone regarding this matter show up for seating or standing or statement there too. So I think it would be best, what we have is what we have in the room here. We do have a sign-up sheet that would be recognized, but we should be able to turn and just swear in one lump thing for what's in the room, because this is the only thing looking to speak. So if we're fine with that.
I'm in agreement with that. Okay. The board is? Yes. All right.
Okay, if everyone who is wishing to speak would just stand at your seat. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I swear to tell the truth,
I swear to tell the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you.
At this time, I'm going to go ahead and ask the staff to put forth their presentation. And Mr. Kirkley, I know that there were some things you were looking at, so if you don't mind just making sure that we cover those.
Correct. So just to kind of familiarize everyone, even though we're farther in the PowerPoint than what we normally would be, if this is your first time being present for one of these meetings, before I lead into my staff report, everything that you would need to be stating and presenting for the board would need to be factual information, not necessarily hearsay. It'll be facts based on your opinion of the situation for the item here in front of us. Each of you in the room are either an adjoiner, the applicant, or someone in close proximity to the land itself. So there'll be an order of the public speaking portion for the public comment, which most of it will be. Mr. Mace, that will not apply to you because you are the applicant. You'll follow me. But we will recognize those folks in order as they signed up in the lobby. So that'll be the order that we will move with. If Chairman is fine, I'll begin with my staff presentation at this time. As you touched on, the first item is Special Use Permit 2020-10 with Frank Mace being the applicant. As many of you, and I think all of you, maybe with the exception of Mr. Yunt, were on this board when the approval was granted for a conditional use for a racetrack for Mr. Mace's property there at 2748 Enola Road back the better part of a year or so ago. Within that condition, as granted by the board, it limited the use of the site for 2 weekend events, 2 races consisting of 2 weekends. At that time, it was looking to be done through Mid-East Hare Scramble, which was a third-party affiliate looking to do races there at the course. On the screen that you have right now is a copy of the original site plan, which was provided back with that conditional use permit request from 2019-02. Within that, this was the scope of the plan of action, what was looking to be done in conjunction with the permit and the conditional approval. If you're noticing on the screen the darker orange line, that is the detailed course of the track, which was designated for the 200 and some odd acres Mr. Mace owns. Here, from March 14th, 2019, is the approval letter, which was from that meeting stating the conditions placed by the board. As you can see, there were 6 items that were listed there to it. Item 3 being the portion that we're here to discuss here tonight. The facility is limited to no more than 2 scheduled or advertised race events, and to exceed 3 consecutive calendar days within a 12-month period, basically an entire weekend, twice a year. Individual use of the track for the purpose of riding for personal use by the landowner is subject to the hours of operation guidelines noted within. The allowance of additional events shall require the approval from the Board of Adjustment. The purpose for the request from Mr. Mace is for the use and activity for trail riding, not necessarily events, but for members of the public to pay a fee to come to the property in a request of every Sunday, with not a limit that's detailed to me for how many riders could be there to it. But it would be a monetary gain. Folks would be charged to come there. As you can see, that would be an exceeding limit from the original condition placed from item 3. That is the entire purpose of what we're meeting for this item. If you look on the screen here, you see the zoning permit, which was issued in conjunction after the approval from the conditional use. The use or setup of the racetrack for the motocross event in conjunction with conditional use 2019-02 must comply with all board restrictions. This permit was issued to Mid-East Hare Scramble. You can see on the upper right-hand portion of the screen, right there. That was the applicant to hold the event. As you can see, that was issued out, permitted. Event took place in conjunction with the conditions listed there by the board. Here you have a portion of the zoning ordinance. This is the basis, which is very limited, so to speak, from the guidelines for a racetrack to be established. As you see, a racetrack and a go-kart track are considered the same thing. 5 necessary items. The conditions that were placed by the board and that were done at staff's recommendation at that time in 2019 were done so, which exceeded some of these restrictions. They put more of a guideline, some priorities, things that are not necessarily listed here. Those were all agreed to by all parties, voted on. That was the basis for the approval. Once again, back to those same standards that we just listed back. Again, once again, those 6 items went above and beyond the original conditions that are just the standard stuff to apply for a racetrack. The purpose for the new request, to extend beyond 2 events per calendar year, as mentioned, to allow trail riding for the existing track each Sunday between selected hours, with riders paying to ride or use the course. They're looking to use a portion of the course which is away from the R1 district parcels. As most of you are aware, and I'm sure most of you are here in conjunction with, you live within a subdivision that is in close proximity to the property in question. That is, for whatever reason by zoning, it is zoned a more stringent R1. All the surrounding property is zoned as RMU, which is the most lax and open zoning district that exists. R1, a much more stringent district. Here we have the existing zoning map. As you can see, RMU is the lighter colored yellow. The darker shade of orange that you see to the left, that is that R1 district that I just referenced. The star in the center of the screen is hereabouts where the track is located from, and to give you an idea of that parcel. Here you have an existing land use map. Once again, these same dynamics were used in the original approval of the racetrack and facility. Here you can see a large wooded section, which will be detailed in photographs and from our site visit that we did as a board to the property itself. Here you have some on-site photos that we're taking in conjunction with the application. Here is the access to the site from Manola Road. Here we have the road access to the track area. This is a private gravel drive that leads back to the track and course coming off of Manola Road. Here we have an adjoiner along Manola Road. This would be looking northbound. Here is the photograph when you make it. I don't know if all members of the board were able to make it there to the site or have personally seen the course in question. But when you make it into the access to, there's a large open field that leads back to the track. The track itself is back in here. So this is a large open field. Portion of the river runs back here on this side. Here you have a surrounding view of the parcel. This is from the upper edge of that cliff, looking back towards, once again, part of Mr. Mason's property. Back in this way, there's several peaks and valleys. As said, it encompasses the better part of 200 acres. Here you have a mountaintop vantage point, and I did this for a photo which was different than what we had done back in 2019 for the original approval. Mr. Mason was kind enough to drive me through most of the trail itself as it meandered and went through the 200 acres. This is the highest point of reference on the property. And as you can see, quite a distance back to the site. This opening through here, I believe, is Mr. Wright's property, somewhere in this area. The R1 area is back towards the top of these houses that you turn and see. Here you have a second vantage point looking back through there. Once again, this was just strictly to show the distance between what could be a portion of the course being used for the motocross riding as a distant sight line to your surrounding homes. This would be looking back towards Pleasant Hill Church, which would be back over in that general area back there. Here, just to give some parameters, the photos that were just showed, we took those from approximately where that star is located. So the sight lines that were looking back from those three angles were looking back towards this way. As you can see, this was the open field that you saw in the previous photos. Once again, just showing the size of the 200-acre tract in conjunction to where the R1 district actually is, which is back here. Here, I added this photo here. This was a bridge access. One of the situations that was from the original approval, that bridge was actually lower. Diener had some concerns there to that for access coming to there. It's been elevated to that point. Once again, Diener would have been involved in that approval to there. That's a separate body from zoning. Given all these variables, factors, and I'm sure that once we turn it to the public comment portion, we're going to hear an abundance of concerns over noise and the number of riders and situations through there. Given that, I also want to touch on, in front of each of you, the packet that was closest to your microphone was corresponding emails and concerns, which may be from citizens who are not in attendance tonight, whether by COVID restrictions, not feeling comfortable coming into attendance. But I tried to print those emails in chronological order, from oldest to newest. Those are assembled there in front of you. Some of those same folks are in attendance tonight, and they'll touch on those same things. Given all of what's listed within there, and given the findings of fact and what we can turn and see, the staff report and the staff recommendation is before you on the screen, which notes, denoting both sides of the equation and the request. On one hand, from staff's perspective, the parcel meets the standards for a racetrack. and was approved by such as the board. On the other hand, staff strongly feels that limitations were originally set and approved by this board for reducing the number of events, ride options for the general public, and the like, as to limit noise concerns from surrounding property owners. As such, a give and take approach was reached, setting fair treatment to limit the track to no more than 2 events, which was all the applicant requested back in 2019. That was noted within the original minutes. All we wanted was 2 races. If looking to alter or amend the conditions from 2019, equal limitations should be considered for the use of hours of use, frequency, and the number of allowed riders for trail use at one time. Within your staff report, if you're looking to alter that, there are limits that are placed within that report for the number of potential riders as well as the use and frequency for it. Mr. Mace is requesting every Sunday. Staff had noted within our report that if it's altered or changed, possibly some changes to that. Maybe one Sunday a month, a limit to the number of riders. Staff will also say, before we get into the public comment portion, that monitoring and regulating it from a zoning perspective is very hard to do, even if putting a limit on the number of people. So do keep that in mind as we move forward with comments. Staff sees it from both sides. There's a 200-acre track. It is heavily wooded. It meets the standards for what a racetrack would be designed for. However, also, I don't know that if the original request was for every Sunday, the board would have decided to change and give the allowance to start with. That concludes my staff presentation, and I assume after all parties have spoke, we'll entertain questions back and forth.
That would be correct. All right, thank you very much, Mr. Kirkley. This time, we are going to ask the applicant to come up. Mr. Mace, you have already been sworn in. And we would like to ask you to present your facts, findings of facts, not innuendo or those things that are not facts. So at this time, we'd love to hear from you, sir.
Just one moment. As Mr. Mace is coming, could we please have the clicking sound in the audience stop? Thank you.
Right ahead, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Frank Mace. I own 200 acres plus South Mountains. Now I'm trying to get a trail riding permit. This is not a racetrack. It's not the same course as the racetrack was approved before. I will run the center part of my property and the back side. There will be no riding in the parking lot. It'll be a quiet zone, similar to a no-wake zone at the lake. You will idle to the trailhead. Then I'm in a low speed. The track will be approximately 10 miles long. They will ride the inner core, and like I said, the back side of the property. There'll always be a hill or a mountain between us and the development that's been mentioned here. Actually riding will probably be on between 75 and 90 acres of this property. I have porta-johns, water, hygiene on site. And like I said, there'll be a buffer zone with a mountain between us and them. The trees, always been, we're basically riding in a hole. There'll be no racing, no flag falls, none of that. You ride, release her at your own pace. I will use all existing logging roads. I will not make any new trails or anything. What I'll use will be existing stuff. Now, I don't think you'll have a problem with the noise, and I'll be harmonious with the land. There's a need for people to have a place to ride. We had a noise check or sound check the other day. We had 4 riders. One riding a 500cc four-wheeler, another riding a 400 four-wheeler, Doesn't ride 230 motocross bike, and doesn't ride 200 motocross bike with no problem with the noise. In closing, if you got any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
All right, I think the board's going to hold off until we
Okay.
have a view of the totality of the situation, Mr. Bass. So we may ask you to come back up. Just remember, you're still under oath. Thank you, sir. All right. This time, I'll go ahead and we're going to open the public portion of the meeting. You will remember you are under oath, and we are asking for findings of fact here, so factual information. Mr. Kirkley, we are allowing 3 minutes per person. Is that correct?
That is correct. So as I'm sanitizing the first station here, the order that you came in and that you designated yourself for addressing the board, the clerk will recognize that order in the order that you signed into. So if you stated you wish to address the board, we'll go in that orderly fashion. We'll proceed down that list. When your name is called, you will come to the podium itself, and from there, you have 3 minutes. We have the bell, which will be listed here. After 1 minute, you'll hear one chime. After 2 minutes, you'll hear a second chime. When your 3 minutes is up, you'll hear 2 consecutive chimes. At that point, please wrap up your comments for the board. Have a seat back where you're at. The next individual will be recognized, will come forward and speak. So at this time, the clerk will recognize the order, and once your name is called, come forward.
All right. This time, we'll go ahead and open the public portion of the meeting. And the clerk will advise who's to come first.
All righty. It looks like the first person is Matt Shoemate. Mr. Shoemate, when you get up there, please give us your address, and we will start the time after you give us your address.
May I lower this? Y'all can hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
My name's Matthew Schumacher. How are y'all?
Good, sir.
I live at 5600 Watershed Road.
Okay.
Me and my wife moved to Watershed 4.5 years ago for the peace and quiet. We was living here in town, and so we decided to sell our house, move out there. Got a house on 10 acres. The house sits right in the middle and sits very high. During Mr. Mace's 2 races a year, I don't mind that one bit. I like riding myself, but it's very loud. I can be sitting in my living room watching TV. It sounds like they're in my front yard. I've been riding dirt bikes and four-wheelers since I was a little kid. One dirt bike, a 4-stroke dirt bike, has the decibels of between 95 and 110 depending on what exhaust it has on. You take 100 bikes, you've got a shooting range at a military base. That's how loud they are. The wheelers that he mentioned, the 2 4-wheelers, those are basically hunting 4-wheelers. They have very quiet exhaust. Those you're not going to hear. Traffic on a NOLA road with that many people. It is very dangerous in the S-curves. Me and my wife about got hit several times last year by people coming flying through there with large enclosed trailers, 5th wheels, etc. I know there's already been several people killed on that road. One just last year. It was a young girl. There was another. I was going to name something else. I cannot remember what I was going to say. I'm so messed up. As far as speed limit, no racing, what's going to stop people from doing that? I went to places all over several different states. You're not going to stop people from doing that. They're going to go as fast as they want to. They're going to race. They're going to race came to the parking lot. That's just, especially younger generation people on dirt bikes. And you take people that's riding hunting 4-wheelers, or utility side by sides, yeah, you're gonna have good citizens, you know, doing what they're supposed to, but you're always gonna have what they call hellions, and you're not gonna stop them. And everybody around is gonna hear it. I live over a quarter-mile away, and it's very loud. And at my front yard, I have 10 acres. My house is right in the middle, up very high.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Clerk will call the next speaker.
Jeff Morris will be the next speaker. When you're speaking and your time is up, if you get caught in the middle of your sentence, it's okay for you to go ahead and finish your sentence.
Before my clock starts, we have 2 residents in our subdivision. They're suffering severe health issues right now. One's cancer and one's COVID, so that they cannot be here, and I just want to point that out. My name is Jeff Morris. I live at 2462 Holly Court.
Mr. Morris, if you will, just one second. Sir, are you an adjoiner to the property, the Mace property? I didn't think to ask that. Okay. Thank
And
you, sir.
I am not an adjoiner. I live in the subdivision adjacent.
Mr. Morris, are you speaking for, you're speaking for actually others?
No, I'm
Yourself?
speaking for myself.
yourself. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir, I'm sorry. I just wanted to let you know we would have had more people here.
Okay.
But because of those medical issues.
Yes, sir.
Jeff, before you turn and begin, just to answer the chairman's question here, in attendance here this evening, so out of what may be speaking
Yes.
of the list, there are 3 adjoiners that are here directly.
All right, and what I would like to do is if you are an adjoiner, would you mind pointing that out when you come up and speak with us, please? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Adjustments, last July, Frank Mace and this community attended a conditional use permit hearing for Mr. Mace to operate 2 motocross races per year on his property, which is practically adjacent to the Holly Ridge subdivision and many homes along the Watershed Road and Nola Road. Mr. Mace made a commitment to this board and to our community to only operate those 2 events up to 6 days per year, 2 events 3 days a week. Knowing that these races create an unbearable noise issue for our community. Based on Mr. Mace's commitments to this community, we agreed to support his request. We could put up with just 2 events per year. This board agreed and placed restrictions of conditional use permit to limit the use of this property for 2 events per year. Everyone at that time agreed that this limitation would reduce the harmful effects a public motocross track would have on established community. Fast forward to this evening, Mr. Mace is now requesting that he be allowed to operate a commercial motocross track from 9 to 5 every Sunday year-round, which is a 733% increase in his operation, for his commercial gain. He intends to charge a gate fee for up to 150 motocross bikes and AVs to operate throughout the day. He claims that he will be directing the riders to stay on courses that are low on his property. He claims that the hills will buffer the noise and that we will not hear a thing. I have talked with motocross riders, and they have told me, regardless of where motocross bikes ride on this 200-acre track, the bikes will burn up the tracks and the noise will be heard from a far distance. The demonstration that occurred last week with 2 ATVs and 2 motocross bikes in no way would reflect the noise that potentially 150 motocross bikes would create in our community. There is an additional issue at stake besides the noise. Our community existed long before Mr. Mace decided to convert his land from agricultural use, nurseries, farming, hunting, etc., to a commercial motocross track. The Holly Ridge subdivision existed long before the racetrack. People bought homes to live at the base of the South Mountains. My wife and I moved from Valdez 5 years ago to enjoy the peaceful and beautiful environment surrounding our home. I asked the seller of my home, why did he not tell me that a commercial motocross track existed by our house? Of course, he indicated at the time I purchased a home, a commercial track did not exist. If I were to try to sell my home, my realtor would have to notify any potential buyers that there was a commercial motocross track adjacent to our property. What chances do you think I would have in trying to sell my home? Mr. Mace's financial gain should not be at the expense of many families who had invested their life savings in securing homesteads and to live in a peaceful setting. In closing, I ask you to consider, if you were in my place, would you want a motocross track permitted next to your home or near your home? The county zoning ordinance is designed to keep hazardous facilities from being permitted next to developed housing clusters. The CUP, conditional use permit, requires several questions to be answered. Included in these questions is, does the activity have detrimental effects on the surrounding communities? The answer was decided last year by the restrictions placed on Mr. Mace's CUP. Please, and I beg you, Do not allow this conditional use permit, and let us maintain what Mr. Mace asked for last year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morse.
Next is Bill Frederick.
Being the board members, name's Bill Frederick, live at 1990 Barn Hill, Orchard Road. So for those of you that may be not familiar with the road, Barn Hill Orchard is off a watershed. I live about 3/4 mile up the property there, off the watershed. We bought the property 2015, pretty much like everybody invested everything we have in the property. I can see Grandfather Mountain and all that. We moved there for the peace, quiet, the serenity it offered. Proximity to South Mountain, this is kind of more of a nature area, so to speak. At my personal property, I have sat on my deck on one of those events, and I'm guessing I'm probably a mile and a half, maybe here more from that property. I can hear those motorcycles on those events. On one occasion specifically, perhaps that was a dry year, I can actually see the dirt above the tree line from my property on one of those events. And I sat up at the top of the hill, back up Barn Hill, so I got a pretty good bird's eye view, and I can hear it. If the wind's blowing really hard on a summer day, it's very faint, I would say that. But I can tell you, I don't know the number of riders that were at those events, but it is audible, very audible at my property. So, you know, I've been down to NOLA. It's already dangerous. Everybody's already told you that. That's accurate. It's already just driving normal. So when you start thinking 150 riders, think 150 vehicles are coming down to NOLA, to and out, whether they're coming from the north or the south. It's going to increase traffic. There's going to be an accident. It's a matter of time. There's been so many close calls. You know, as far as I know, Bradley put up a picture. It showed from the top of the mountain. I would comment on that. I think it's an accurate picture. As I take multiple pictures, and I'd be happy to show you of Grandfather Mountain. And you know, when I'm sitting there looking at it, it looks like it's really huge. But when you look at that picture, and it doesn't even do it justice, it looks like it's really far away. I think to appreciate the point of view, one would really have to stand at that spot, because houses are going to look smaller in the picture because it's trying to encompass all this data into that picture. So I would say, me personally, I live a little distance away. I would hope there could have been some kind of compromise, but to go from 2 races to 52 Sundays, I think is a huge leap personally. And Lord, we're even talking about Easter Sunday, so to speak, 52 Sunday. You know, so in my mind, not 52. I don't see 52. Maybe something less. I don't know. Me personally, that's my personal opinion. But we enjoy the property, and it is audible. You can hear it. That's a fact. I can see the dirt. That's a fact. There's going to be runoff. If I can see the dirt in the air, there's going to be runoff into Henry Fork sooner or later. And that is actually a trout stream in the county. And it's well known, actually, for many people that come to the county to fish. So that's all I would really like to share with y'all this evening. I would prefer not 52. I think it's way too much. But thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Kirkley.
Mr. Chairman, before we move to the next individual on the list, for your attention to address some of Mr. Frederick's concerns, he is listed within your email packet as from July 13th, which is towards the back end of it. So reiterating some of the same concerns that you just spoke on there. So I just want to pass that to you.
The next person coming who, please excuse me, I accidentally skipped, is John McFadden.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening. Excuse me a minute. I hung in my hearing aid. My name is John Ed McFadden. I live at 2500 Henry River Trail. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, my name, you just heard. I live 250 feet from the Mace property on the Henry Fork River, where my wife and I have owned this property for more than 20 years. well before Mr. Mace began his motocross racing. I sent a couple of emails, and so you have that, but I'm just going to highlight some of the things that I said in my emails and emphasize some things. That we moved to the Enola community of the South Mountains area because of the beauty and the tranquility for our retirement, and we invested much of our retirement funds for that purpose. I strongly oppose this special use permit, as I did in 2019 when Mr. Mace assured us neighbors and this board that he only wanted to have 2 motocross events a year, and now he's back asking for 52 plus the 6 he already has. We neighbors compromised last year by not pursuing additional opposition to the 2 events based on his assurances given to us and to this board. These 2 weekends are a nuisance to me and my wife, as we're unable to use and enjoy our property due to the noise of the races that are not held within the property lines and the race course lines that you saw up there provided by Mr. Kirkley. No amount of limitation as suggested by Mr. Kirkley regarding the number of riders, which trails used, or hours of operation, all difficult to monitor, as he pointed out, will be acceptable to me and I suspect to most of my neighbors. You have to experience to know how nerve-wracking it is to have all that noise roll down the hill from that mountaintop that Mr. Kirkley took pictures of right into my backyard. Although Mr. Mace kindly showed me and another neighbor his proposed trails, I am not convinced that he will follow his proposal to you because of the riders in the past haven't done so. Please explain to me and my neighbors why this board will accept Mr. Mace's word that his request for an additional SUP will not be a nuisance and he will follow the rules, but you will not take our words that this proposal and this current SUP are nuisances to us in our lives. Explain how that's fair and just. Mr. Mace offers no valid scientific or factual evidence that his SUP will not disturb the peace and the tranquility of the community and not cause a loss of property values, not damage the environment, but the board is willing to accept his word. Again, I ask, how is that just and fair when we say it's a nuisance? We are being as honest as he is, or so we hope. For all of the reasons from my comments and to the emails, I ask you to say no to this request. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, sir.
As Mr. McFadden just stated, members of the board, multiple emails from Mr. McFadden are included within that same packet addressing very much the same concerns that you just referenced right there. While we've got a second, I want to make sure, Jenny, are you still there with us?
Yes, I am.
All right.
Can you hear me?
I can. I'm just making sure you're still there.
And Mr. Kirkley, I would,
Yes, I have you on Bluetooth, so I hear you quite well. I'm having a little static on one of the speakers somewhere in there, but other than that, everything's fine.
Good. Thank you, ma'am.
one thing I want to point out here, just the course of action, that this board has made no decision. There is an application, the applicant has asked for something, the board has made no decision. So to think that we endorse any point of view at this point is incorrect. I want to make sure that that is understood. There have been some comments so far that seem to think that we are endorsing. We haven't endorsed anything. We are entertaining the facts at this point. Once those facts are in our possession, we will use the totality of information we have and state statute, along with North Carolina statute and Burke County zoning law, to make our determination. So just please keep that in mind. All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next.
Connie Cook.
Hello. How are you, ma'am?
Okay, how are you?
Good.
I live at 3238 Enola Road, and my property joins Mr. Mace's, and as my brother's does as well. And the 2 weekends a year is really loud and really noisy, but, okay, it's 2 weekends a year, but to think that every Sunday of our lives we're gonna have to listen to motorcycles in the background just seems a bit much. The track as it is now is not much more than 100 yards, maybe a little bit more than 100 yards behind my brother's back door. You can just walk right out the woods and there's the track. So it's really loud. And Sundays or afternoons are when the family can get together, have a picnic, cookout, whatever. But if there's motorcycles going on in the background, you're not going to be able to have a good conversation or talk to each other or just enjoy the day. And I mean, I don't want to cause any trouble, but I just hate to think that we'll have to listen to that forever. And so, you know, maybe it could be, as somebody else said, once every 3 months or a couple months or something, once in a while. But it's really noisy, and the traffic is really bad, as has already been mentioned. Even coming down my house on Enola Road to get to the track, coming from both directions. And so anyway, I would just hope that it wouldn't be where they're back there on their motorcycles every Sunday. So that's all I've got.
Thank you, ma'am. Oh.
Sorry. House cleaning.
You're getting a lot of mileage out of that thing. Thank you, sir.
Next, we have Dale Zimmerman, and that's the last person I have on my list.
Good evening, gentlemen. I live at 2525 Henry River Trail. I'm adjoining property. I don't have a home there. It's just 10 acres of land that I've been pursuing, wanting to build a home there, and I've gone through the zoning and trying to get things. But that being said, I strongly oppose Mr. Mason's request for a special permit. If granted, would change the way of many of my family and many of the families in the surrounding area due to the excess noise. I was there last year during one of the races. I was forced home with my wife. She just said she couldn't take it. I have hearing aids. I'm a victim of noise loss, so it didn't bother me as bad. But I have put time, money, and research with the Forestry Division, Department of Wildlife, the Army Corps of Engineers, to be advised on what would help me preserve my land, the Henry River, increase the well-being of habitat in the area, because I am an avid hunter. I enjoy wildlife. I put food plots on my property. I know Mr. Mace's hunted his property for years, but I've contacted the local building zoning department and received paper, the locations, the restrictions, everything that I need to do on my property to help it be the development that I want for my home. I have the help and the support of directions of my neighbors. This request for motocross racing directly across the river on Sundays will alter my progress and if not destroy it completely, because my wife doesn't want to listen to motocross racing every Sunday. This has been really hard with me, and I'm sure with these people. I'm listening to what's going on. We have compromised. We have allowed him to have his 2 races a year, and I can put up with that. Can the wildlife put up with that? You guys ask yourself that. I know, being a wildlife manager up in Wisconsin for deer, this isn't going to work. I have contacted, in short, EPA, Army Corps of Engineers, Water Quality Standards, and Department of Wildlife, and advised them on the letter that I received here about what's going on, and they assured me that they would be there to help me through anything, that if they saw any problems or violations, that they would be there. They have been already once for me. They assured me that that your planning and zoning department and the authorities and agencies have proper codes, laws, and the authority to govern that area reflecting the state mandates. They assured me that it all would be taken care of at this level, but if there was any problem. I am in no way willing to compromise on conditions stated in last year's agreement, and will work on resolving the issues using whatever facts, laws, and rights of individuals to seek an attorney to be advised on the direction that I need to go forward. I'm disappointed that we're even here and that we're dealing with this at such a short notice, and already during these times of COVID-19 that we're even in this room discussing what's going on, and I'm disappointed that it's a Sunday that we're even dealing with this.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that clerk, is that the last that was enrolled and signed? Deputy Marler, if we can, just to make sure there is no one within the lobby that is in conjunction with this, while he is checking in that manner, so before we close the public comment portion, while he is checking that, I would like to, just for the record, read in, not necessarily the necessary emails, but the names of the individuals who provided emails, which some listed in there want to get read to there. The majority of what you have within front of you all correspond to the same statements that you've heard from the general public here this evening. So at this time, while Deputy Marler is looking, I will read those out just for the record and in the minutes. First would be Mike Chandler, lead pastor at Summit Church. Dr. Jack Hodges Jr., pastor at Pleasant Hill Baptist Church. John McFadden, who is in attendance here tonight. We have an anonymous letter, which was provided to the office as well. No name or return address regarding it. Another email from John McFadden. Second email from Mike Chandler, once again from Summit Church. Mr. Jeff Morse. Doug Wright. Ken Buell. I'll spell that just in case I mispronounce it. B-U-H-L-E of Henry River Trail. Bill Frederick, who is in attendance this evening. Michael Drew of Barnhill Orchard Road. Dan and Janice Carswell. Those are the emails that are in front of you, some of which were emailed out to you as they came in to me. As you can see, it was a rather large number, so just wanted to make sure that was properly noted within the minutes. Deputy Marler, is there any other individual? No one else for comment?
Thank you, Mr. Kirkley. All right. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and close the public portion of this meeting. Agenda item, I should say. I'm sure we all have questions. I'm going to let you, as board members, go ahead and ask those. What I would ask, if you have questions for Mr. Mace, let's address those first. And then for the community members. That way we can all follow along, and then I'll answer mine if you haven't already asked them.
Before you get started with that, let me please ask the audience that whoever's speaking, if it is not you, please remain quiet. If you have a question, raise your hand. If the board sees fit, they will recognize you to speak. Thank you.
Yes. Tony, I would like to go from your end to this end, so we'll go clockwise there.
Okay, the question I would have, Mr. Mace, is how in the world can you keep teenagers or other people from racing on the track or out of the track and staying on the track? I've been around enough bike riders that they don't follow. any rules. So that was my major question.
Jenny, did you hear Tony's question?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
I'm asking Jenny if she heard Tony's question. Tony's asking how would Mr. Mace make sure that the riders were staying on the course? Is that right?
Right.
Keep them racing.
Design course. Can we make sure Jenny's still there?
Jenny, are you still there?
Sorry, I forget to hit that mute thing. Yes, I'm here.
Okay, did you hear Tony's question there?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Mace, I'll allow you time to respond, please.
The horse will be marked. Common sense will tell you it's gonna all go one way, or somebody's gonna get killed. You can't run both ways, and this is not a racetrack or a motocross track. It's gonna be run on the backside or right on the backside of my property, the inner core, and like I said, there'll be a mountain between us and these people's housing development. And I'm talking a mountain. I ain't talking about 20-foot heap. The clip we standing on when he took the picture, that's the mountain to be between us and them. And it's a big one.
And I will point out, since you mentioned that there are a number of us, Rick and I were with you, and we actually stood right where that picture
Right.
was. Jenny, I think you took a tour of the course as well. I don't know if Rob or Tony, if you were able to or not. Okay, so we have some familiarity with
Repeat
that.
that, please, Dan.
I was just saying, you had been at the course, Rick and I they showed a picture from the overlook, the top where it was cleared. If you look back down the valley, Rick and I had seen that firsthand. I know that you were out there and did a tour as well.
I didn't hear all that in because your speaker is the one that's cracking up so bad, but I did go on the site. Is that what you just asked me?
That is correct.
I did go on site and I drove the whole site. I went to corners on the properties and overlooked the ridge. And do you want a conclusion on what I've seen? And
Well, no, we were just corroborating what Mr. Mace had said.
all right.
Around the backside of this property, Jerry Cook's place, Steins's, I'll be a long ways away from them. It ain't gonna be like it was before. We're not riding this course that they race on. They run the whole 220 acres. We're running 75 to 90.
Mr. Yunt, thank you, sir. Mr. Yunt, did you have any other questions?
No, that's it.
Okay. Jenny, you're kind of seated between Mr. Yunt and Mr. McClure, so I'm going to let you go ahead. Do you have,
Go ahead.
please, if you have questions for Mr. Mace?
On the staff recommendation, I do have a couple things on the ask in.
Okay, for Mr. Mace, correct?
It says the staff would recommend that we number or limit the number of riders and the limited hours for the Sunday. And then they gave some recommendations for those hours. But I want to ask other board members as well, if we go with daylight savings time 12:30 to 7, that way the churches would not be impacted with any morning noise. And then on standard time, go 12:30 to 5, since the sun sets usually between 5 and 5:30 during those times, and possibly limit the number of Sundays, like for if it's Easter Sunday or something of that nature, that we request you not allow those specialties or those things to happen on those special occasions. I say that because I think this year Christmas falls on Sunday, if I'm not mistaken, this year. So we wouldn't want Christmas to be rowdy as well. The other thing was I wanted to ask was it said up to 25 riders, and you may want to ask Mr. Mace this. would that be 25 riders per class? Because I don't know how many classes. He says it's not really a race, but at the same time, most of these events there are as much as 10 to 12 classes per event, and it could be up to 10 to 20 people per class. So I need some input there. I'd like to know what his plans are in that, and to explain to me what the permit moto is, M-O-T-O. They use that as a racing term, and I would like to have some knowledge of what that is exactly.
All right.
What was that again?
Jenny, should you,
You get all that?
the last
Right,
part
go
where
on.
you're asking about the term moto?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what you're talking about there, Jenny, but I can ask Mr. Mace. Let me ask him, how many riders, do you have any idea how many riders are going to be on the track at one time?
If it's gonna be open 8 hours, there's no telling how many could be on at one time, that sometimes they may not be in it, sometimes they may be 50 or more.
Depends on how many people show up.
That's basically it. There is no class. Everybody rides together. This is not a competition.
Okay.
This is strictly trail riding. Be no flags dropped, nothing timed.
No classes, it's strictly a trail ride.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
That's what you're saying.
Yes, ma'am.
So if a couple of them get kind of rowdy, want to kind of, you monitor this while it's going on? You'll be monitoring it while it goes on?
Yeah, I'll be there the whole time.
Okay.
And then with the EMS is familiar with the site due to the racing, we got helicopter pad, we got all that. As far as emergency crews, if needed. It is extreme sport. It's, it's accident happens.
Did you hear that, Jenny?
I think so, yes. The other board members, have they given any thought to what number we should restrict it to? On how many can be on that track at a time?
I would say 125 for a whole Sunday, but they ain't gonna all be on there at one time. If somebody shows up,
I didn't understand that.
the track will be open for 8 hours, and I will limit it to 125 per Sunday. But they ain't gonna all be on the track at one time. They may be 3 come, ride 2 hours and leave. They may be 6 come and ride 4 hours and leave. I don't know that. But they will not be over 125 a Sunday. When they come, I ain't control of that.
Okay.
Somebody ain't gonna haul a motorcycle, Winston-Salem, I'm gonna tell them they can't ride. That ain't right. You can't do business that way.
All right. And that's all the questions I had.
All right. Rick, do you have any questions for Mr. Mays?
I think I'm good.
Okay.
I don't have any at this time because they've asked the questions I've been asked. Some of them similar to them.
All right. I have actually several. First off, why Sunday?
Do what?
Why Sunday?
Well, that's the day I do business. I don't do no business on Saturday.
Okay.
My wife's 70th Adventist, I honor that.
Okay.
Walmart's open on Sunday, everything else, they selling beer, they sell everything but liquor. And that'll soon be passed, I'm sure, because they're losing money.
I understand that, sir, but do you think that maybe your neighbors might take less offense if you consider that too? I understand it's a religious day for you, but for them as well, from what I'm seeing in the letters, they're saying they're observing that as a religious day as well.
I know that if they mow their grass on Saturday, I mow mine on Sunday. That's just the way it is.
Okay. The reason I ask, I mean,
That's a good question.
if you are willing to work with your neighbors, and I'm going to ask them in a minute, if they had a community meeting, when we spoke out there, I suggested a meeting
Right.
because a lot can be taken care of in your community with your neighbors before you
Right.
get to this point. And of course, a lot transpired since last March. So that's the first question I have. So I want you to think about that. The second one is, It's not a race. This is called a trail ride, correct?
Right.
Okay, so make sure we have that down. Ask you that about Sundays. The first event, two events that we approved March of last year, you were the landowner but not the applicant. In this case, you are the applicant and the landowner. A little different there. Can you tell me about any injuries that have occurred on the track during the events that this board approved?
Yeah, one man had a heart attack and died. We had another hit a tree and got killed. Other than that, it's been carved on his legs, arms.
So that's based upon two races that this board approved?
No, that's based on probably, you don't understand, we had 4 races before we ever brought it before the board, and nobody said a word about nothing.
And that's where the injuries occurred? During those 4 races?
No, the injuries occurred after we got it approved. But I'm just saying, we had 4 races, and nobody said a word about anything.
Correct, but what I'm talking about are the races that occurred
Right,
after this
people's gonna
board
get
approved, and we had put in stipulations that law enforcement be there and EMS be there.
Yeah,
Okay, and still there were injuries that occurred.
they ain't gonna stop a man getting killed.
Well, sir,
They kill on the interstate all the time on motorcycles, 181. How many
sir, if
is
I
killed
sit
a
here
year?
though and I think that my actions or the actions of this board lead to the death of a human being, that affects me.
To what?
I said if I think that the actions of myself or this board lead to the death of a human being, that affects me.
It upsets me too. He had 2 daughters, but he was racing. He was racing on his own accord and
Yes,
by choice.
yes, he was, and I'm sure
And
he
been doing it a
relinquished
long
all.
time. He died doing what he enjoyed doing,
Yes, sir. I understand that.
which is bad. We can't change that.
Mr. Mace, you're asking for something that is unprecedented in the history of this county and its zoning. You understand that, right?
I do, and I'm not letting them understand this. In my mind, I'm not causing a problem.
Okay.
The noise will not be hardly anything at all,
Why should this board approve your request?
because I think it's a sensible and reasonable request. It makes common sense. This land's been in my family since before the Civil War. That deed goes back to 1865.
That has no bearing to the
It
matter
don't.
before us. I appreciate your family history. My family history goes back before the Civil
Right.
War, Revolutionary War here in the county. So, I appreciate that. But I'm looking at what's before this board right now. So that's, those are my thinking.
As far as the injuries, I can't keep that from happening. I don't think me, you, nobody else.
No, and I think this board did, we did our due diligence in requiring that of you to have EMS there. Was EMS there on premises whenever that occurred?
Yeah,
Okay, law enforcement was there present as well?
there wasn't no law enforcement, they got their
Mr.
own.
Kirkley, was that
law
not
enforcement.
part of the requirement to have law enforcement there?
No.
Okay, that's my mistake then. I swore I read that in there. Do you have that slide up, those 6 items?
Should. Well,
I appreciate what you're doing. I want you to know that.
Thank you.
Mr. McCord and I have talked for years about the need. It certainly seems to be a desire for people to ride motocross. Trail ride certainly is a recreational sport, but we have to look at the totality of the situation.
Item 5, Mr. Chairman, police assistance.
Number 5, that's where I saw that, with traffic control for any event. During those 2 races, can you give me an idea, Mr. Mace, of how many people were in attendance? You don't have to, if you can think of just one of those events.
I really don't have a clue how many people was there, but I know they had about 350 riders.
Okay, so if we
That's
say,
that's busted up probably in
so
6,
maybe
7 months.
150 people, and you did not have police assistance with traffic? But yet that
The
was,
sheriff's department come out and looked and said there would not be a problem.
Sheriff Department came out and looked, said there would not be a problem the
Would
day
not
of
be a problem.
the day of the event.
Not the day of the event before.
How would they know there should not be a problem?
I guess they deal with Steel Creek and them places like that, 181,
Okay,
the GNCC bunch.
okay. All right. So going forward, we don't need to think that there's going to be police. Folks, I see your hands. I'm talking to Mr. Mays right now. I respect you, and the comments you want to make, you'll be given an opportunity to do so. My concern is that we have this in writing. And you're telling me it's not occurring, it's the sheriff's department's fault, basically, because they say there's no need.
We never had a need.
Mr. Kirkley, I'd ask you to look into some of the questions that have been brought forth as far as traffic and accidents. You had checked with, I think, DOT and Highway Patrol and Sheriff's Department?
Correct. I reached out by email on August the 11th at your request. I sent it to both Deputy James Marler through the Burke County Sheriff's Office, as well as to James Evans with NCDOT. Mr. Evans with NCDOT did not offer a reply. Basically, this was spawned at part of the request of one of the emails which dictated the traffic issues and wrecks and curvature of the road and some situations through there. Deputy Marler did a look within our communications center, which detailed no large congestion or traffic concerns that were dealing more so with Pleasant Hill Church, which was what the nature of the email request was for. There was not, it also, basically the email reads, Deputy Marler did a bit of research on the location. Communications Center was unable to locate any traffic congestion outside of normal four-way intersection that does not take into account any of the events or races that were held into the past. So even with the congestion, which may have been a result of the two events Mr. Mace would have done in conjunction with the permit, no added traffic concerns were noted from the Sheriff's Department.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Mace? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
At this point, what is going on? The board is calling those individuals that it has questions for. So we'll continue down that. Is there, Mr. Yunt, do you have any questions for the adjoiners or the community members?
No, sir.
Mr. McClure? I skipped Ms. Cook. Ms. Cook, do you have any questions for the adjoiners or the community members?
Repeat that one more time, Ian.
Do you have any questions for the adjoiners or community members?
I don't have any, no, I don't have anything.
Okay. Mr. Love, do you have any questions?
None at this time, thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. All right. Board, there were two folks had their hands up. Would you care to yield them at least a minute each to make their comments?
Go ahead.
All right. Sir, you had your hand up. If you'll come up, please.
There were some good questions you guys asked Mr. Mace about the amount of riders that were going to be there. He stated in his opening statement that he did a sound test with 4 bikes.
Sir, we were there, yes,
Is
sir.
that true? 4 bikes? 4 bikes.
2 4-wheelers, 2 motorcycles.
We're talking 125 bikes, 8 hours a day. I don't care if you run 6 or 8 or 10 bikes through the trails. You understand
We understand the difference, sir.
The impact of that noise level, the amount of
We understand.
what could happen to the properties, and the voice of the wildlife that lives in the area.
Yes, sir.
That's my understanding, because Mr. Mace is an avid hunter. You've hunted. I heard that you shot a lot of deer.
Sir, please address the board and not Mr. Mace.
Okay. I'm just saying, basically, what I'm asking is, if that sound was taken with 4 motorcycles, has anybody done a sound test during the races?
Well, we would love it if somebody had, and they were able to present that to us.
Well, I believe everybody in this room was on the same page of allowing him to have that and dealing with the signs, with the sound, and they finally lived through the two races and realized what the sound was, and that's why there is the impact that there is.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Sir, 1 minute, please.
I have 2 comments. Has anybody here been to Brown Mountain before?
Are you talking to a race or to the mountain?
Brown Mountain riding trails.
Okay, I'm sure everybody's been on the mountain.
The one I've been is on 181.
Okay. Oh, Brown Mountain riding trails is in Collinsville. There's markers. Nobody stays on the designated trails marked. There's marks going one way. There's been people killed head on. Their people venture out further than the land that's provided. Nobody stops them. I did it myself. The other comment I had, GNCC race, there's plenty of cops. I've been to several myself. Things get out of hand. There's always fights. There's been knife fights. There's always people with alcohol problems, get too mouthy. You take 350 people in a small field for a whole weekend or multiple weekends, you're going to have problems without cops. That's all I got to say.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Morris. Folks, we've only got 1 minute. Usually this is not the custom thing that we do is go back. We usually...
Up here, I'll only be
Call
30
you
seconds.
up. Go ahead.
I'll only be 30 seconds. I just want to make sure we don't lose focus that racing and trail riding are basically the same activity other than the start of the race. But if you have 8 hours of trail riding, the noise that will be generated is no different to the extent that you might hear from a race. It might be a little louder at a race, but you'll still have the annoying sounds for just easy trail riding. I just wanted to refresh that point.
Thank you, sir. Somebody else had their hand back up there. Mr. McFadden.
This is the map Mr. Kirkley provided me, and you have seen the hare races that have been, my understanding, perhaps incorrectly, but my understanding was the hare races were supposed to be held within that area. They aren't. They're held outside, and as Mr. Schumacher has said, trail riders go anywhere and everywhere. And so to say that their trails will be marked and riders will stay on them, it's not going to happen. And because of the geography, if they're off the trails, all that sound's coming down the valley to my house or up, down and up back into Mr. Morris's or Mr. Chandler's or other folks in that neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, in the back row.
Couple comments and I'll be done here. You know, I actually work at a major furniture manufacturer teaching young men how to be machinists and stuff like this. And so, you know, at our age, we're not like was, but y'all, the sport is predominantly a male sport, motorcycle. And if you think back to your age, it's always a challenge to outdo your buddy or your friend. So to think that there won't be some kind of racing type activity, I think is really not correct. And just so I know it earlier, I didn't mention it, but when we did move here, we did look on the other side of the county, and there is Brown Mountain dirt bike track, and also off Antioch Road is a race car track. That's a big reason we chose the south side of the county, because we didn't want to live next to a racetrack or motorcycle trail riding track. So hopefully that makes sense, but young men are going to be young men. That's the bottom line. They're going to race, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, the board has heard from both the applicant and the community, the adjoiners, and also from staff. Any other questions at this time? Okay. Jenny, are you there? Are you there, Jenny?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. We're at the point right now that I'm going to entertain a motion.
Wait just a minute. Go back and say what you just said.
I said at this, okay. Did you have any more comments you wanted to make, or did you have any desire to speak to the community members or the adjoiners?
No.
Okay.
Not this time.
All right.
Did you hear me?
I did. So would the board be ready to make a motion, or do we want to take a moment and think about this, talk about it? Do you have any comments amongst ourselves or for staff? I'll be honest with you, I have some serious reservations. And thinking out loud, the reservations that I have, Jenny, could you go back to that slide of the 6 points that we were just at? Thank you. Are looking at the requirements that we set forth originally back in March of 2019. The hours of operation, I understand all the concerns that are going on from the community, and I do feel the community did compromise to let these events occur in the beginning. And I felt there was good faith from the community and the adjoiners with Mr. Mason allowing this to, for their approval. They seemed to compromise and come to an agreement. And I think that's why this board moved forward. At least I'm speaking for myself from that standpoint. My concern is some of the items there, especially number 5, and some of the things, the injuries that have transpired over the course of just the first year of events. And at this point, I am not in agreement with going forward. So I'll be interested to see what the board thinks.
Well, I'll talk to that, okay? This is a motocross track. There is an amount of risk involved with that. And, there's a matter of risk of walking across the street. And so I don't think that we, as a board, need to consider the consequences of
your actions?
Of somebody's actions. Not my actions, but somebody else's actions. And if I make a motion or a comment or a vote on this, I'll be voting just on the principle of what's happening. We can't go to the fact that somebody might get hurt. Anytime you got a motocross track, somewhere along the line, somebody's going to get hurt. And that's just a matter of fact. And if I vote yes or no, that wouldn't even be in consideration of my vote. Part of life,
Well, Mr. McClure, I'm looking back here at this number 5, and I would love to, I know we have a representative from the Sheriff's Department here, but I would not put you on the spot because I'm sure you would not be able to answer the question in number 5 as to the traffic out there. That would, if I'd given you a week to that, maybe you could have, but we certainly put the question out there, and I noticed that, sir, you said that there was a wreck and somebody was killed there a year ago?
Young girl, yes. I'm not sure the circumstances though.
Okay, on that particular road that you would have traffic on, not just, okay.
An old road in the S-curves.
Very bad S-curves.
Correct. I'm aware of that, and of course the type of vehicles that are probably carrying these bikes and things of that nature as well. But that's what I'm looking at, Jenny, and I understand Mr. McClurg's point. There certainly is risk.
Every day.
But I think this board tried to mitigate that risk in number 5, and that did not occur. That's my concern.
Now, what about that didn't happen?
Number 5, it says police assistance with traffic control, and a lot of the concerns we have with the community here is around traffic. Am I correct? So a lot of that is traffic. So we set that forth in March to address that specific concern that they have now that they had then. So that has not been abated. That's my concern. So how can this board approve something going forward when the staff recommendations, the recommendations of this board have not been adhered to? That's my point. Mr. Kirkley, if I am out of order, I encourage you to correct me.
No, I mean, I think the point that I think you're driving home, Mr. Chairman, is the 6 items that are noted here were standing that needed to be followed when the original approval happened. So moving forward, I think it's a concern of, are these same things going to be acknowledged, recognized, or if changes occur to an approval, can those be followed? I think is really what we're kind of looking at.
Well, if they're not being followed now, and we've already had fatalities involved, what is this board to think that they will continue to be followed? That's my thinking. And also the chosen day. And I understand the situation there. However, we have letters from 2 pastors. We have a church that's right there. We have folks that would like to enjoy their Sundays, and I understand that. And the other part of that is, too, when we went out there and looked at the sound levels, where were we at, Rick? The highest was about 95 decibels. And sir, I've been on a military shooting range and actually fired on one, so I understand the sound there. It is ear piercing. So.
It was 95.
Okay. The problem that I think that I don't know, Mr. McClure, if you have this or not, there has been no professional out there with a decimeter that has recorded and brought any kind of material evidence as to the sound level to this board. That would have been greatly helpful in us making a decision. There's been no evidence brought to this board as far as traffic congestion. We can only assume from an educated guess that with that number of riders on that type of road that it would be congested. So those are the things I'm looking at.
I have the same concerns myself.
I don't think that's in our venue. I mean,
Well, we have to look at
if that's the case, then, you know, you got congestions everywhere.
Well, we do, but did the board contribute to that congestion by a decision that we made or are going to make? We have to look at the totality of the situation of our decision, because we have to look at who's living with that decision. And that decision, Rick, does not...
We all live with it.
Exactly. Our children will live with it. Their children will live with it. It goes on from here. So that's where I'm coming from. It is long-term.
Yeah.
Plus, we set a precedent if we approve the application as it has been submitted to us, was to keep any other track in the county to say, we want to do the same thing now.
It's our privilege.
Is that something that you want to continue down that road?
Well, we'd be faced with it.
Yes, we would.
But I'm not afraid to be faced with things. You got to face with them. You hit them head on. And consequences are consequences. We don't get into that part of that. This way I see it is, you got all kind of issues going up and down the highway. People get off from work, and just for instance, getting on Interstate 40 there at with the old Walmart every afternoon. You got a bottleneck every afternoon. Who's doing anything about that?
You're risking your own life. Thank goodness that's not in our purview.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's not in our preview.
Well,
This kind of situation is not in our preview.
The effects of the zoning we make is, Mr. McClure, so that's my point. I would like to ask your adjoiners and your neighbors, what would be acceptable in your eyes? I'm going to ask Mr. Morse to come up, since I think you've had quite a bit of communication. Sir? Are you agreeable?
We can be here all night doing this.
We can.
Okay? You need to call it to an order, and we need to vote on it one way or the other and let the chips fall. We can be here all night discussing this thing. So I think basically we need to vote. If it vote for it, vote against it, whatever. We could talk all night. Let's just get on with it.
Well, at this point, I think what we need to do is we need to see if we can figure out some kind of agreement between the parties instead of us forcing our opinion upon them. If we could have them work together, that would be better.
And I didn't understand what I think that was you just speaking.
Yes, I'm asking Mr. Morse to tell me what would be acceptable as far as use or what they would accept in their community. We had a consensus back in March of 2019. And it was the community and Mr. Mace coming together, and they agreed on that, and we went forward. I think it's worthwhile to go back and do the same thing we did last time and ask for their opinion. Mr. Morris.
I can only speak to the majority of the people in my community who we have talked about potential compromises. And we would work with Mr. Mace, not every Sunday, maybe once every month, or how about an event every quarter?
I believe that's what the lady in the back could say.
Yeah, an event every quarter, have 2 days every quarter plus his 2 hare races. And I have nothing personal against Mr. Mason's a very personal man, and we got along great, and you're very hospitable. So this is not personal, I promise you, sir. But it's just too much every Sunday. So yes, we would, like we did last time, we would compromise with Mr. Mace, but it's got, you know, can we live with 2 days every quarter plus his 2 races? It's better than every Sunday. We're willing to compromise.
Mr. Mace, what are your thoughts on that?
I didn't do a lot. Do Sunday front. Last Sunday, we're full.
2 a month.
Hey, did you hear that?
Close the public comments now.
Jenny, did you hear that?
Come back at me one more time.
Did you hear what Mr. Morse had said? He had said possibly 1 race every quarter. Mr. Mace came back with 2 per month. He said it was not financially feasible for him any less than that.
That would have, I think that was actually staff's recommendation at one point, was it not?
If there was a willing compromise. Once again, if you were modifying the original conditions of only 2 events, those were things to strongly consider. Staff did not denote that every Sunday would be something that would be feasible. There would be some limitations placed there to it if the decision of the board was to modify it in that manner. Mr. Mace in his application is requesting every Sunday, not a limitation to be placed. You also don't have a limit within the application of how many potential riders. As we've already said, 300 and something were there for the 2 races. He's stating 125 at a max, so basically you're at 40% of what you would have on a race day, potentially every Sunday. Is there a guarantee that that would be there every Sunday? No. But at the same time, if the board granted it, you can't take it back if you gave it.
That's why we're spending the time on this.
I hope that answered your question, Jenny.
All right, so we've heard the compromise that's willing to be had here.
Can we get somewhere in the middle?
Well, we can have a conversation right now about that. That's where I'd like to go.
Mr. Mace don't want to compromise, does he?
Well, and the thing is, Mr. Mace, you're asking for this in conjunction with the other 2 events. We've already made point that you have Easter, which is a holiday observed by some. You have Christmas, which is a holiday observed by some. So that may be not days that you want to do that. I don't think this board can set that forth, but we can certainly say that, if you want to get along with your neighbors, it might be something to consider.
I can work around that.
Okay?
Not a problem. Let me just say there's a bigger traffic problem with Apple Hill Orchard. Traffic problem every Sunday going to the Apple Orchard, and they are facing church that Avenue.
Excuse me, we can't have you speaking from your seat. We can't have you speaking from your seat.
Right.
We're recording
Yeah,
and we
yes.
need you on the microphone.
There's a bigger traffic problem going to the local Apple Orchard than they are when the church lets out every Sunday. The church lets out, they're gone in 30 minutes. It's a continuous flow of traffic going to the Apple Orchard. You're talking about a traffic problem. That's more of a problem than anything on Enola Road.
Well, I understand that, sir, but you have to take into consideration the type of vehicles. What type of vehicle hauls motorcycles, and do they usually just haul one motorcycle on that vehicle?
Some hauls one, some comes big campers, some comes with a tractor and trailer load. Some comes with a trailer that looks like it's come out of salvage yard. Truck too. You can't control that.
No, you can't. But that's certainly a consideration to look at.
Well, the horses going to South Mountain State Park.
What do you say?
That's gooseneck trailers. Hey, the road's lined up with them every weekend going to South Mountain State Park.
Yes,
There's
sir.
no difference. They all pay road taxes. They all buy fuel.
Understood. Mr. McClure, you had a question or a statement?
No,
Okay.
I'm done.
All right, this time I'll entertain a motion.
Please repeat that through that. I want to make sure I heard it properly.
At this time, I will entertain a motion.
All right. Okay, I do not have the staff recommendation in front of me that was listed on your PowerPoint tonight, but
Would you like for that to be shared with you? Is there a way that we can share that with her, Mr. Kirkley?
I am welcome to read that to you, Jenny, if you would like. As it is shown on the screen right now, there is not a staff recommendation as in normal situations for what we have that come before this board. The board made the decision of the 2 race allowment as well as the other 6 conditions. If the board chooses to modify those, staff is simply suggesting that hours of use, frequency, number of riders, and the access to it all be in strong consideration within your motion. If you are going to modify from the 2 events, you need to be specific on the number of riders, hours, anything that's being modified to, because staff is very limited on our capability to monitor it.
all right. I'm going to read what I've got written down here, and Bradley, I may need your help a little bit on this, but at this point, I'm going to recommend that we approve this request with certain modifications. First of all, during daylight savings time, 12:30 to 7 p.m. That way all the churches will be protected from noise and it will not interfere with their services. During standard time each year, it would be 12:30 to 5 because usually the sun goes down and we don't want them out there after dark. And the sun's down by 5:30 at the latest. The other stipulation, the staff had at first said 25 riders limited. I think that needs to be between 70 and 80 riders at a time, with 226 acres and the trail being scattered over that amount of space. 70 to 80 riders would be more than enough for that particular type of motocross that he's planning. The other thing is the possibilities, and if staff and the board will approve as well, is that we go with 2 Sundays a month, and then he can bring it back in a year if he deems it necessary or feels that he needs more time. With the number of motocrosses within a 100-mile radius of us, most of them are 2 Sundays a month. So if he could alternate his Sundays with those, then they could work together to keep the sport going. Now, Bradley, is there something there that I need to add to that?
Not if that is your motion. So basically, to summarize your motion, during standard time, 12:30 to 7 p.m., daylight savings time, 12:30 to 5 p.m., a limit of no more than 80 riders for any trail riding activity, and a limit of 2 Sundays a month.
I had that back.
Precisely.
I had daylight savings 12:30 to 7 and standard 12:30 to 5.
Okay.
Any other board members want to?
Jenny, are you willing to modify your motion? I can't support what you put there. Are you willing to modify your motion?
I'm sorry, Ed, I didn't understand all that.
Are you willing to modify your motion? I cannot support your motion.
I still didn't understand it. I think they're too close to the mic.
Jenny, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you very well, Brandon.
Okay. So Ed is asking, are you willing to modify your motion, or is your motion what you're putting before the board for a vote?
That's what I'm putting to the board for a vote. Up to 80 riders not, well, maybe 80 riders not to exceed 100.
Please tell her I can't support her motion.
Well, she knows, I think she knows
Okay,
it.
so with that is your motion before the board right now, correct, Jenny?
Yes, sir.
So, Mr. Chairman, we would vote
Yes,
based
it
on
is.
that motion.
Okay, I'll second it.
We have a second. All those in agreement, please raise your hand.
Jenny, is that a yes from you?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
So we have 2 to the affirmative. All those opposed, please raise your hand. Okay, 3 to the opposition. The motion fails. How many?
That would be 2 to 4. Remember, we have member.
We have 1 already there against.
Automatically, for
Yes.
any motion that's put, it is a no vote coming from Mario.
So the motion fails. I am willing to entertain.
It did pass or it did not?
Did
It
not.
failed.
Not.
That's it.
That motion failed.
Okay.
2 votes to
All
4.
right.
Okay.
Don't get 2 licks at the thing.
Jenny, you did hear, right?
Jenny, you did hear that the motion failed, correct?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so at this time, the motion did fail. Motion was made. I'll let Mr. Kirkley address the continuation of that.
So at this point, Madam Clerk, is that no other motion can be made before the board itself. That was the motion for the vote. There's nothing that comes back in that regard as a secondary motion. Is that correct?
You may.
Okay. Is there an alternate?
That was my understanding, Bradley. That's what I wanted to clarify. There should be an opportunity for an alternate motion. I am going to make an alternate motion and see if it is acceptable to this board. And so what I was going to do, Jenny, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but who's speaking?
Okay, this is Ed. And if you just as I asked for a modification, if I could modify your motion, I'll be happy to listen to your modification if you so wish. It's no more than 6 a year, 6 trail rides, and I think that needs to be clarified. 6 trail rides, not races, no more than 6 per year, to occur on a Saturday. I'm going to leave your hours.
Yeah.
So if you will use the hours that Jenny stated, you will use all the other information she stated as far as the riders. Okay.
Yes.
The date shall be provided in advance of these trail rides to staff. I know it's hard to do. The dates will be provided of these trail rides will be provided in advance to planning staff.
All right.
Of particular attention, the original events. Item number 5, traffic control provided by police. This board specified that for a reason. And I want that specified in this as well. Okay. Those dates, Mr. Kirkley, need to be provided to you before any extension of activities are provided. That's also stipulated. So no events are to occur other than the two that are already approved by this board until those dates are provided. I want to be very clear on that. Mr. Mace, will you allow alcohol consumption on the property?
No.
Thank you. Okay, dates are your choice too, this motion I'm making, Mr. Mace.
I realize that. You ever seen a drop on a motorcycle?
Sir?
You ever seen a drop on a motorcycle?
See one on a lawnmower.
Bad, but
He ran into a light pole in Lincoln. His mother was in a wheelchair in the back of the cart he was carrying. It was interesting. All right, that is my motion, Madam Clerk. Do you need me to read the motion back, Jenny, or are you good?
Jenny, did you get the notes of the motion?
I got the notes down here, yes.
Okay.
And I'm open to, if another board member wants to make a modification of that, I'm reasonable.
Breaking up, Bradley.
I'm stepped away from the mic now. Can you hear me?
Yes, you started breaking up.
Okay. I think I got you.
All right, I got the notes, yes.
Okay.
If anybody wants to modify that, I'm reasonable.
If no modifications are made or presented, now would be a vote based on the chairman's recommendation.
Is there a second?
You need a motion?
Second. Need a second, Jenny.
Okay.
hold it, man.
Okay.
Based on Saturday, ain't gonna happen, nothing. That's how I think.
So you're saying that you do not want us to consider this vote?
Not for Saturday, no, I can't do that. I'm being stuck, that's the way it is.
If the board's offering you an option here,
I realize that.
You
Okay.
realize that.
Just in case.
yeah.
I realize that, but Saturday, hey, well, I believe that ain't an option.
Is there a board member willing to, that's in agreement to amend that?
I think everybody's got the right to worship the way they want to. Whether it's a rock,
Well, I'm not necessarily talking about that, Mr. Mace. I'm more concerned with the situation with with the community there when you look at it. So, how about I amend my motion to this? I'll give you the choice of Saturday or Sunday, but still 6 in the motion.
talking to six events a year.
6 trail rides. At
Six
your,
trail rides plus your event.
plus your events, you can have those events whenever you wish,
6 times a year.
6 times a year.
That's every other month. It's pretty skimpy,
It's something rather than nothing.
pretty close. All right, we'll do that.
Okay. I second the motion.
Okay, so you amend that to his choice of days.
Fine.
Again, you understand the dates are to be provided to staff before the events occur.
Ain't no problem.
Okay. You understand this, the major point of concern is that item number 5, that doesn't seem to be happening. That's a concern. All right, Clerk, Madam Clerk, would you read the motion back for us one more time? I'm sorry. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, you're recommending approval of the motion to include the 2 events that Mr. Mace already has, with an amendment of no more than 6 trail rides per year to occur on Saturday or Sunday, with the hours of 12:30 to 7 p.m. during daylight savings time and 12:30 to 5 p.m. during standard time, with no more than 70 to 80 riders at a time. Dates for these 6 events must be provided in advance to the planning department, traffic control must be provided by the police department, and no other events, and traffic control must be provided by the police department, and no new events other than the two already approved for shall be held before staff has been given proper notice.
Correct. And I want a copy of that if you don't mind. 2 points on there I want you to correct, please, sir, clerk. Saturday or Sunday, not to be, what is the word I'm looking for?
Consecutive days.
Consecutive, that's exactly the word I'm looking for. So not to be consecutive. In other words, I want to make sure we don't have a Saturday and Sunday trail road. I'll just be blunt with that. Sheriff's Department, not police. All right, Mr. McClure, are you still in agreement?
Second.
Mr. McClure has seconded. All those in favor?
Okay.
Motion passes. Mr. Mace, you have 6 extra days that you didn't have before. I hope that helps more than nothing. I don't want you to do that, sir. I hope you don't. You still have the other 2 races. COVID's not going to last forever. Let's hope. Thank you, sir. Thank you, folks. Thank you, board.
Can I have a 5-minute break?
Yes, we'll take a 5-minute break. Clerk, can you set a timer for 5 minutes, please?
You do not consider that.
Yeah.
can guarantee there will be racing as well.
Where is,
Guys on motorcycles, they race on the highway, sitting on.
Thank you.
Jenny, can you hear me?
Jenny, can you hear Ed?
Is she hearing?
Yes, I do.
Is she hearing from that or this?
There's not as much static right now, so that's a good thing.
We have plenty of static while ago.
Rick, if you'd install this system, it might work better. Staff, are we ready to go ahead?
I'm going to mute Jennifer, so if you don't hear me, they can specify when they want me to say something or.
Okay.
Madam Clerk, let me know when you're ready.
All righty.
Gotta get the man in here.
Ready to go?
Mr. Chairman, before we start back through here, what we have in the building now is what is signed up to either speak, is a direct adjoiner, property owner, landowner, representative of the owner, in conjunction in the building. And right now, we do not have anyone that is within the lobby or is outside. So based on that, we also have a listing of who had signed up to turn and speak. That was corresponding order of what come in. For those of you, my apologies there. Within here, if this is your first time appearing within or coming before a quasi-judicial board, it is a factual-based meeting. So everything that you're stating, everything that you're representing needs to be factually related. Needs to be new information that's being brought before the board for consideration and for a vote this evening. The chain of events will be myself presenting a staff report, then a presentation from the applicant. After that, we will open it up for public comment. Within the public comment, you have 3 minutes. There'll be a bell chime. We will call you up in the order that you signed in to turn and speak for. And at that point, you'll have 3 minutes. The chimes will represent each minute as they pass. One chime after 1 minute, a second chime after the second minute, 2 consecutive chimes. Please finish your comments for the board for consideration. As you had entered the room and what was posted online as well, a copy of the submitted site plan, which is located in the front right corner of the room, was posted online as well. With that, I'll turn it back over to the chair and we will begin this item.
All right, the board will find itself back in order as we present our next case on your agenda. This being SUP 2020-11, a request for a special use permit to establish and operate a commercial campground on a parcel totaling 42.5 acres, 0.05 acres, my correction, addressed as 2013 Winding Pine Way, PIN 175302129 of Burke County Lake James Camping Resort, LLC, being the applicant. We'll turn our attention to the staff part of their presentation at this time. Mr. Kirkland.
Yes, thank you. Just a quick reminder, if you have a cell phone, please silence it. That was part of my statement I should have made earlier. With that, we'll begin with the second item on the docket this evening. As mentioned by the chairman, it is for the establishment of a new commercial campground as set for transient camping use, as set to be on Winding Pine Way, as located and noted on the screen there in front of you. The applicant and owner of the property has an existing campground which is directly across Benfield's Landing Road. This would be a new standalone commercial campground. The existing campground has exceeded its limitations, so therefore it is a new request, brand new standalone. Same ownership, standalone operation. With that, we'll move forward with my PowerPoint, which you'll see there onto the screen, which will coexist with the staff report that the board has been provided there to you. This item was up for discussion over a month ago. It rolled over to tonight's meeting. No changes within the staff report from the original July report have been modified or changed. In front of each of the board members, you have before you a list of emails corresponding from surrounding property owners, which I'm sure during public comment will be referenced and stated in numerous times and statements before you for hearing this evening. With that, keep those items in front of you as those individuals speak. On the screen here, you have the existing zoning district map. As you can see, the large green section, which is outlined in yellow, is the property in question, 40 some odd acres. It currently exists as a vacant tract. Within the property itself, that property was rezoned and approved by the Planning Board and the Board of Commissioners several months back in advance of a first application, which was in January. Details for specifics of meeting all the standards for zoning approval and to be before the docket before this board were withheld. Biggest one being NCDOT approval. We'll get to that situation here in a moment. But the rezoning had occurred, property currently zoned CDL. Here you have a current existing land use map. As you can see, a vacant property, wooded area up along Benfield's Landing Road, which is with the pointer there on the larger screen. Open area there to the back, existing service road. This corresponds to the existing site plan that was provided. In the lower portion, you have an existing nursery surrounded by lakefront property up here on the north side, wooded track over here to the east. Here you have the site plan in question. It was prepared by Brooks Engineering. Mr. Brooks is present here this evening, and I'm sure we'll be taking questions and comments shortly. Within the application, or with the site plan itself, it details what is on the screen. 104 total sites for the proposed campground. Of those, 91 RV spaces, which as mentioned are to be for transient uses. 12 park model locations and 1 park model office. Biggest primary difference is the transient use. The current campground makes use of leased areas where folks would leave their units year round. This would be for traveling, coming and going from the site, not long-term leases. As detailed, looking to be open from November 1st through March 1st. The pool and clubhouse are noted on the site plan for the property itself. That is in addition, the existing campground does not have a pool for that. Within that, for the disturbed area of use, details within the plan detail 21.12 acres. Screening is proposed along the neighboring lot lines to the south and western boundary line. Those are noted on the plan itself. Process and plans under review, as mentioned, since January of 2020. This was originally submitted for the board as conditional use permit request 2020-01. It was withheld, pulled away in lieu of necessary approvals from NCDOT. Those have since been provided. As noted on the bottom line, NCDOT driveway permit was approved, a copy provided to staff 7/7 of this year. Here we will turn our attention to some site photos of the property. Here you have the parcel access coming from Benfield's Landing Road. The existing volunteer fire department is located there in the background. This would be the main primary entrance to the campground location. Here you have, looking the opposite side of Benfield's Landing Road, as mentioned, the existing campground is located on the left of your screen. It was part of an expansion that was done several years ago under previous ownership, not by the current applicant today. On the screen here is the approval letter from the Department of Transportation. This was the biggest holdup and hurdle from staff's point of view before presenting the item before you for a vote here this evening. As mentioned, that was provided in July of this year. It is stated from NCDOT for the approval as based on their review and statements. They are standard correspondence that anytime a site plan is provided to staff, staff does a zoning review. We also forward that out to NCDOT, the county engineer's office, environmental health, the Burke County Fire Marshal's office, Burke County Building Inspections, all for feedback and correspondence. Of all those necessary agencies, all have approved and now stand as the plan is submitted before you. Here we look at West End Fire. As mentioned, it services the area there. Its direct access is directly beside the corresponding entrance to the proposed campground. Here you have an existing gravel road. This would serve as the main entrance looking towards the proposed site. It's important to note that the driveway access is actually shared, at least at this point, and from the plan itself, it will make a left turn going up the hill to that location back in here. Reason being, a portion of that drive is privately owned by another individual. So keep that in consideration. Here we have the turn. As mentioned, this would be headed back up. Benfield's Landing Road is back over this way on the other side of the tree line. So once again, existing vegetation out of view. This proposed area up the hill would be the proposed denotation of the 12 park model sites. Transient travelers would be towards the rear of the property. Here we have an existing power line easement. This is a Duke Energy easement and right-of-way. Duke has also signed off on their approval and statements for the plan itself. Here we have the existing sight line looking south. This would be looking back towards the existing nursery use. Here you have the service road, which is denotated on the plan itself. As you can see, open area, not a lot of existing vegetation or disturbance other than the preset of the proposed campsites, which are noted on the plan. Here you have the sight line looking westbound. This would be looking back up an opposite hill. There are some adjoining property owners with residents on the opposite side of the tree line there. Within there, as mentioned, I've said numerous times, the biggest holdup that staff had before presenting anything before the board for a vote this evening, or from last month as well, was the necessary approval of NCDOT. With that being the last hurdle being provided to staff in all of our review from there, as corresponding from other agencies and their approvals, is recommending the approval of the special use permit request as requested for the new commercial campground or RV park, as set to include the available spaces, park model sites, and other amenities as denoted on an approved plan. Keep in mind, staff has not signed off entirely on the plan itself. Modifications to the driveway, sloping of the front drive, as noted on DOT's approval, are subject to some replanting needs, as well as some other areas that may need to be looked at if conditions are placed by the board. All work and construction of this requested use is subject to a plan review and procedures from zoning staff, as well as any additional requirements placed by any county plan review office. Such in case, had DOT modified what's looking to go, they would provide us statements of that. Corresponding would have to be modified to that for the plan. All development and activities should meet the standards for both Article 11, Section 1113, and Article 13 of the Burke County Zoning Ordinance. With that, that concludes my staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Kirkland. This time, I'm going to go ahead and ask the applicant to come up. Who will be speaking for the applicant? So if you will come up, introduce yourself, you state your address to the clerk, and need to be sworn in.
Go ahead and swear me in first.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, if we could also, just as a formality, just so we don't have to do this
Please.
again, if anyone who is wishing to address the board, speak in the same manner that I just did for my presentation, if we can, let's stand where we are and be sworn in at this time. That way we don't have to do this once. Anybody who is wishing to address the board, speak, offer comments, anything through there.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I swear to tell the truth,
I swear to tell the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the board for coming out tonight in the midst of the pandemic and everything.
And your name, sir?
Mark Brooks with Brooks Engineering. We're the civil engineers for the project.
Okay. And Madam Clerk, did you get his address?
Excuse me?
I need him to
Thank
say
you.
his address.
Thank you.
Address, home address,
Yes.
60 Edge Lawn Road in Asheville, North Carolina.
I'm sorry.
60 Edge Lawn, EDGELAWN Road, Asheville.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate Bradley's presentation. Yes, there has been a lot of work done with regard to permits and entitlements for the project, and I thought I would just expound on that a little bit more to talk about the project. Traffic was obviously a big issue right from the get-go. Staff asked us to get a traffic study. Traffic study was conducted by traffic engineering. That study was submitted to the NCDOT for their approval. Upon approval of the traffic study, it was submitted as part of our driveway application. There was not found to be any degradation in the level of service along Benefield Landing Road based on traffic study. And just, FYI, standard traffic engineering protocol, RV parks are generally have much less trips allocated than single-family residential homes. So I think that certainly helped out. So as Bradley mentioned, we've got the driveway permit. One thing to mention, we had to propose a number of pretty significant improvements to get the driveway permit. In one of the pictures he showed, there was the limited sight distance going to the, I'm going to say to the north or the east, probably to the east. Not that one, other way, that one. So this hill right here is going to be significantly graded back to improve the sight distance to meet the DOT's 300-foot road requirement, which we can easily achieve. The road will be graded back a fair amount, pretty much up to and maybe even inside the tree line a little bit as you see it there. So I would urge you not to judge the proposed conditions at the driveway entrance based on the existing conditions. One thing I think that demonstrates the ownership's willingness to listen and hear some of the other concerns aside from the driveway. When we were out here last time, we heard some concerns about pedestrian traffic. I was instructed to pursue a pedestrian crosswalk at the entrance there. So we've submitted some pretty extensive plans to the DOT as of yesterday for the pedestrian crosswalk. Already got a few comments back, but it looks like that's going to all be worked out. It's very significant. It's not just striping. We've got signal lights to indicate to drivers as far away as 500 feet coming into that location about the crosswalk. That'll obviously be a very nice safety amenity to the folks at the RV park, but also to the potential travelers on the Flora Fauna Trail that is my understanding going to be coming through there at some point in the not too distant future. So I think that's a pretty significant added feature. Other concerns heard, environmental. We have obtained an erosion control and stormwater permit from NCDEQ, so that's done. One thing that should be noted too, the site drains away from the lake. Let's just say the contractors didn't do the best job with the erosion control. It would not end up in sedimentation of the lake. It drains down towards the tree farm here. Water, we've got water allocation from Brentwood Water, which is the local public-private utility company. Plenty of water there. I might mention we might be the only RV park in western North Carolina with fire hydrants in it. We've got a fire hydrant proposed at the office and at the clubhouse. Fire marshal has reviewed those plans and signed off on them. Sewer, as you probably are aware, we're utilizing the existing sewer treatment plant that has currently utilizing less than 25% of its permitted capacity. And so that's the plan there. So, the impact to the surrounding community on this, we're not using resources. Again, these are, not homes that are going to be packing kids in the schools. Visually, I think looking back, I think I counted 2 homes that could probably see the bulk of the existing homes, that could see the bulk of the RV development. Currently, probably will be able to see the cabin, the departmental cabins up on the hill as you drive by. 1 or 2 of them perhaps, but that's about it. So I think while there is some visual impact, and certainly to the immediately adjacent neighbors, there could be some visual impact. We do plan to adhere to the buffer requirements and all of that to help alleviate that for those folks as best we can. So, to end, I would just say there's been a lot of work. This is an extremely well vetted project. The permits are all but done. It's ready, shovel ready, if you will. The project's been deemed safe and reasonable by a number of people who've reviewed it: fire marshal, NCDOT, planning staff, multiple engineers. And so, I think these are all qualified independent individuals who've looked at this and deemed it a safe and reasonable development. You may hear some opinions to the contrary on that today, but I would urge you to fully understand what's the work that's gone into it to make it that way. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And I'd like to introduce the ownership legal counsel.
Sir, if you will, just state your name and address for the clerk.
Absolutely. Henry Stapp. I'm the attorney for applicant. My address is 810 Lansdowne, Lansdowne Road in Charlotte, 28270. And I don't have a lot to add to what Mark said. I do appreciate you guys being here tonight. One thing that I did note from staff's presentation, I think maybe the season had been flipped around inadvertently. It's actually March to November as opposed to November to March.
Yeah, yes, that was an error on staff. I knew it as soon as I read it. I was like, that's not correct. So
no worries. Just wanted to make sure everyone had the correct information. And apart from that, I just wanted to say, since the decision of this board is to be based on the application and facts and evidence, including expert testimony or opinion, and that's all as opposed to speculative, unqualified opinion, I thought it would be useful if we could possibly get the speakers tonight to state if they have any such qualifications, such as being a licensed appraiser, being a licensed engineer, for those type of things that they'll be opining as to. If that's something the board is open to, I would appreciate it.
Those are general considerations, Counselor, that we do take into our findings.
Sure, just wanted to make sure it made it into the record. Thank you. So,
Could you please tell me your last name again?
sure, Stapp, S-T-A-P-P.
Thank you.
Will there be anybody else from the applicant that would like to speak at this time? All right. Thank you, Mr. Kirkland.
While we are getting ready for our first speaker, please keep in mind that this is a quasi-judicial procedure, so you should consider yourself in a court of law. Please do not speak from your seat. If you want to be recognized, raise your hand. If the board wants to recognize you, they will do so. Please do not speak to members of the audience. You are addressing the board. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, do you have an order already that you have prescribed to call the speakers in?
I do. The first person is David Johnson.
Good evening.
Mr. Johnson, if you will, address the clerk, please, and give her your address.
My address is 6097 Holiday Shores Avenue. I live right down the road. I understand what the attorney was saying, and I may not be an expert in certain areas, but I do live there, and I do experience expertly the traffic that happens around there. I've nearly been run off the road. I've had people nearly clip me left and right. There's no shoulders on either sides of those roads and blind curves. And so what I would like to comment on is at the point that this is put through, we, the residents, are going to be the ones that are going to be left with the effects here. The engineers, the architects, the attorneys will all have left and won't have to deal with the congestion, noise, dangerous driving conditions, and concerns over pedestrian and golf cart traffic. The investors, wherever they are located, also won't have to deal with what this expansion will have brought to our community. If, as I expect, all of our concerns prove to be correct, where will we go for remedy? Who will we see to undo what has been done? If traffic and the subsequent accidents prove to be too much for these narrow roads to handle, will NCDOT have to come in and make expensive and time-consuming alterations to our roads to accommodate an RV expansion that shouldn't have been okay in the first place? Who will we see when the inevitable happens and one of us residents have an accident with one of the many RVs traveling to and from this park? It was stated to me by one of the individuals involved with this expansion that Lake James is greatly underutilized. I think a typical weekend on the lake during summer months would dispel that myth. It was also suggested that those of us who live in this community just don't want anyone else to share in the beauty of the lake and that we're just being selfish. This is also a fallacy. We're fine with the original zoning intent of a potential subdivision with larger lot sizes and fewer houses. This will be an addition of over 100 temporary residents, and that's just the RVs, not counting families, coming and going weekly. The constant travel by as many as 130 to 40-foot RVs every week is an incredible burden on our lake community. Finally, it is always very concerning to me that zoning that was put in place to protect the natural beauty of a particular place and to ensure a nice area community to entice other homeowners to come and enjoy the natural surroundings can be altered with seemingly very little concern as the impact the new zoning will have. The explanation I usually hear is that such and such state board approved it, so therefore we must approve it as well. I would ask you to consider your ability and responsibility to reject this expansion plan as unnecessary and far too damaging to the local area. Sometimes it's enough to consider that although a project like this can be done, the question really is, should it be done? Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
The next person is James Rickman.
(2109) Sunset Ridge in Nebo. Afternoon.
How are you, sir?
Got a couple concerns. Of course, it ain't gonna be the dead horse is naturally the traffic. Got traffic concerns, plugging up, hard to get home, impeding the fire department, impeding police if need be. We've got some traffic concerns here. Next thing my concern is noise. The noise in the area, the noise the campground is going to produce. Our property joins this property. We're up on the hill. We're going to be looking over down into this community that's maybe coming in. The noise we are concerned about highly. It is quiet as a church mouse now, and that's going to go away if this comes in there.
Sir, what side of the property are you on? The side of the nursery or?
No, I'm actually, I believe your second slide. You see our house? Okay. Just to the left there, you can see the crooked driveway coming up. There you are right. That's our house right there. We're actually overlooking. That's a high little knob. We're overlooking all this big field here.
Okay.
I'm concerned about the noise, like I stated. Next concern that I have is people that's in the campground, they're going to be there. How are they going to maintain to keep them in the campground instead of coming up, traveling through our woods, walking across our property to keep us safe and to keep us in private. My last concern is, I haven't heard anything about, is also the trash. It's going to be introduced on our roads. You can tell when it becomes springtime, when the campers start coming into the campground, the trash picks up. I'm constantly picking up McDonald's, Hardee's cans and trash just thrown on the side of the road. It's terrible. That's going to increase too. What are the concerns? How are they going to address that? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Arlene Rickman.
On Sunset Ridge Nebo. Would you mind putting that slide back up? Obviously, my husband lives in the home that is there. And if you look at that whole expansion on that side, that's us. All of that land we own. And it is up. So we view that whole little valley that was pristine and beautiful and quiet, and the reason we brought into this community. So again, my major concerns are the same. Is it privacy? The whole reason we came here was for that peace and that privacy. The safety, the noise. A couple of Sundays ago, the noise that was coming from the campground at 6 in the morning was tremendous. A lot of music coming from it. And I thought, is there not a time frame, an ordinance somewhere for noise for us, this community? We also noticed on the plans here that, and the owner was gracious enough to speak with us earlier, was the evergreen or the shrubbery that they're going to put for boundary is not on our line. And as far as I know, we're the only families that are really overlooking this community. So we have requested that that be relooked at. Plant that greenery there for us as well. Give us that not only a sound barrier that should be there, but also a barrier for people not to go through, to easily wander on our land. We're not that far. And that is a big concern for me. I bought behind a gated community for a reason. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Shauna Rickman.
I'm actually not speaking.
Paul Mason.
$4165 US 70 East in Marion. Thank y'all for letting me speak. I grew up on Lake James, lived there my whole life, and up until about 8 years ago, when I was able to get a spot into Lake James Family Campground at that time, it was very limited for me to get access to the lake because there wasn't places for us to go and places for us to camp. But about 8 years ago, we got a spot in there at Lake James Family Campground, and we have loved it. Since that time, me and my wife have been able to retire and enjoy most of our retirement time there at the campground. Since the campground has been open to the new owners, they've been numerous amounts of improvements, updates, and you know, we need to be about growth within Burke County and McDowell County, and I think this addition will be greatly utilized. There's not another campground or RV park around that you can go in and stay for a couple of nights. Now granted, there are some concerns from the homeowners, and I get that, I understand that, but growth is not cheap. For Burke County to grow and to bring people in to grow and the revenue to grow like we need it to, we've got to sacrifice. Sometimes we have to sacrifice some things. So I think the addition to the campground is going to be greatly used. I think it's going to be a great asset to not only Burke County, but even to McDowell County, to where people can come and enjoy. Lake James is one of the most beautiful lakes in this area. So people want to come and people want to spend their money in Burke County, because where are they going to be eating? Where are they going to be buying their supplies at? Either Burke or McDowell County. So I think it's a great time for us to invest in letting this campground bring more people in for the revenue. not only but give people an opportunity to share the beauty that we've been able to share. So thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, sir.
I'm not sure, is Carol Mason's going to speak? Okay. Mike Hunsucker.
I'm at 2714 Lake Ridge Court, Nebo.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your time. I know it's, we already had a long session before, and maybe a long session coming up, and I did leave you some documents up there to read. If I'd known I was going to have 3 minutes, which I already did, I should have made a smaller font, maybe. In any case, I want to, and I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert as far as in traffic, view sheds. I'm not an appraiser, but I wanted to do a little background on how this came about. I want to remind you that when this was converted to CDL, it was not a unanimous vote. It was 3-2. It wasn't like, oh, hey, this is a great thing to happen in our county. At that time, and I think Mr. Bradley can tell you that the applicant did not have to say we're going to put a campground in there. And it absolutely didn't have to say they're going to put 105 units in. Although if you see the date on this particular plan, you'll find that it was 8 months before the last board meeting in November. So they knew what was going to happen. I live next door. I'm over here. Anyway, I'm just, Lake Ridge Court is, no, you're in a good spot. You're fine. The map is fine. See a little cul-de-sac up towards the right-hand corner? That's Lake Ridge Court. No further, there you go, down in there. So that's where I'm at. But in any case, you're not going to have me up here saying I'm against the campground. I'm against the campground expansion the way it is now. Just because you can put 105 in there doesn't mean you need to put 105 in there. Right now, that campground, and once again, no expert, but all my evidence, I can't find any campground in this state much bigger than that one. There's one at Cape Hatteras that holds 400. Right now, the current one holds 175. How many people is that? That's, if there's 4 per camper, that's 700 to 1,000 impacting the lake right now. Good for them. They've been there. They were long there before the subdivision was there. Absolutely not against that. So what's the county have to gain? Get 700 to 1,000 people already on the lake. They should enjoy it. Absolutely should enjoy it. Kind of a fun fact, though, that 175 sites is essentially the same number of sites if we put houses on every lot available right now on the south side of the lake, from the dam down all the way over to the bridge. 175 sites at the campground right now, 175 home sites available. And I'm talking both sides of the highway. Well, it's not a highway, it's a state road. At this stage, so why do we need more campground? I hear because we need camping. Well, I can tell you right now, you can go anywhere in this country, there's never enough camp space. Never enough. And so this national company, and this is from their webpage, prudently operates these communities with a view to selling these properties to investment groups and institutional investors or private publicly traded REITs. Not exactly your mom and pop operation, okay? This is not going to be them managing this down the road. What will happen then? Because we need more campsites. So I question, I told you I'm not an expert on traffic and such, and traffic is a concern. I'm at 3 minutes. So I'll finalize with how I stopped before. That strobe light going 500 feet down the road is going to be in my front yard. A strobe light, that's what the county man told me, or the DOT man told me. I'll end how I ended the last meeting. I'm not against the current campground. I don't think it should expand at the size they want to expand. But at the current rate, we're going to love the lake to death. Thank you so much.
Sir.
Stephen Odell.
How are y'all doing this evening? Stephen Odell, 6043 South Wilson Hill Road, Mill Spring, North Carolina.
I'm sorry, South.
Wilson Hill Road, it's Mill Spring, North Carolina.
How are you, sir?
Doing good. Been at the campground since 2009. I've watched my kids grow up from little bitty kids to young men, young adults. If it wasn't for that campground, in that point in my life, my kids would have never got to enjoy the lake and enjoy the atmosphere. My wife and myself this year, we made some decisions. Are we going to stay in the campground, or we're going to try to buy a lot on the lake? At that time, 10 years ago, I didn't have an option. That was the only option I had. My family's really enjoyed it. I've seen the campground change ownerships 3 times. All 3 times it's been improvements. I just know that not everybody can afford a $500,000 lot. Not everybody can afford a house on the lake. But a lot of people can afford to take their family and go camping every weekend and enjoy the time together and make a lot of memories. And to me, that's what camping's about, is family and memories. We chose not to buy a lot. We chose to stay in the campground because of the campground atmosphere. It's family, it's friendly, there's no crime, you can leave your doors unlocked. It's just where people want to raise their kids. And I know the campground, I know several people that's been in there for 30, 40 years, some of them's here today, that have raised their kids, their grandkids, and even great-grandkids. And I mean, I think as county leaders, that's what you want as people to grow their families and grow their community. And even though this is a little bit different setting than what the campground is now, it's still people having fun, and it's still families being families. And I grew up on a dairy farm. From the time I was 5 years old, I worked. I didn't get to do a lot of things that other kids got to do, but you know what? I had my family, and that was what life's about. And so I think this will be a great addition for Burke County, other counties, for people to get to enjoy the beautiful things that God's made right here in Burke and McDowell County. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Jerry Odell. Maureen Jobs.
Hi, my address is 2244 Lake Forest Cove, Nebo. Thanks for taking the time to listen to us today. I'm not an expert, but I am a resident of the area, and I am not opposed to the expanded campground per se. What I do oppose is approving this project before traffic safety and environmental issues are adequately addressed. One main concern is that the West End Volunteer Fire Department sits right at the only entrance and exit to this new proposed campground. This station protects the lives and the property of the year-round residents who live along Benfield Landing and in the neighborhoods along Benfield Landing. What looks like on the plan to be a stop arm right at the beginning of the driveway, and the fact that there are no turn lanes off of Benfield Landing for campers to utilize while they're waiting to get into the campground is of great concern. You could have maximum 3 campers on coming in either direction, and they would totally block Benfield Landing Road. There aren't any shoulders for them to move over. If there's an emergency, how are the volunteer firemen going to get to the fire station? And how is the fire apparatus going to get onto Benfield Landing and travel along Benfield Landing to get to the emergency? The second concern I have is environmental, and I did hear that an environmental study had been done. I haven't been able to see that, but I'm concerned about where the people from the new expanded campground are going to be swimming lake-wise. Where will they have access to the lake? Is it going to be from just a couple of the small boat ramps that are in the existing campground? I'm concerned about 100-plus families swimming in such a confined area. I also would like to know what the restroom facilities are going to be in the existing campground to handle those 100 families who are now going to be swimming in the lake. I know that there's a swimming pool proposed for the new campground, but who wants to swim in a crowded chlorinated pool when you have a cool, pristine lake right on the other side of the road? I won't really get into traffic because I think that's been discussed quite a bit, but I would just say that the increase in vehicular and pedestrian traffic along Benfield Landing is certainly going to result in numerous accidents. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you.
Mitchell, and I'm not sure of the last name. Thank you.
My address is 3285 Maple Lane. That's in Lenore, North Carolina. Thank you for hearing me today. I am 37 years old. I have been going to Lake James ever since I was 1. My father, who's sitting over here, has owned a houseboat on Lake James ever since then, and I have seen the lake change a lot. And now that I'm older and I have 2 kids, I actually have a spot in the campground, and I absolutely love it. Me and my wife, we do a lot of traveling and camping across the U.S., and we go all over the place. And to be honest, this is one of the nicest kept campgrounds I've been to. That's one of the main reasons that I got a permanent spot here, because it has a sense of community. Everybody appreciates and respects the lake that stays there. And having the ability to have transient sites where other people can come and enjoy the gem of North Carolina, which is Lake James, I think is a great thing. So I'm definitely for having the approved transient sites. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Setzer was the last person on the list.
All right. Thank you, folks. We appreciate your comments. This time, we're going to go ahead and close the public portion of this meeting. All right, we've come to the point, board, for board action. But before we get to that point, I'm sure you have questions for the applicant. So we will kind of go the same way we did last time. Tony, Mr. Yutt, if you have questions for the applicant, and for the applicant, if a board member has questions, if you will come up to the podium so that we can hear you.
Yes, I have a couple of things. The sewage, they're talking about that. Is that tying into a line from the county?
If you will, just come up, please.
No, sir. There's an on-site wastewater treatment system that the prior owner, Mr. Daly, installed. We did the design and permitting for it, and it was designed for 28,000 gallons a day. It's very large. It's actually up above there's a drip dispersal system on the hillside up above where this proposed campground is, and it's currently utilizing about 5,000 gallons
Is
per
it
day. So
pumped up the hill to that area you're talking about?
That's correct.
What happens when the power goes off?
It's got a backup generator.
Backup generator, okay. Now, one of the things that's been mentioned, but I want to bring it up again. I live on the lake, and that's going to put a lot of additional boats. Where are they going to put their boats in?
Yeah, I don't have that answer. I don't know if there's a public boat landing nearby. I do know that. I don't think there's any slips available at the marina, but I'm the civil engineer. I'm not the boat guy.
Actually, don't know where they're going to be put in.
Tony, you probably put them up there at Canal Bridge.
What?
Yeah. Up there at Canal Bridge.
I know there are places available, but you got to load up. That's what I was thinking. But the biggest thing concerns me is the traffic that this is going to add to the lake area, and it's going to be like somebody spoke a while ago, very dangerous because trailers being pulled and campers on them and that kind of thing. And I was in a wreck a year ago because of the narrow road. And so I'm quite concerned about the additional traffic that's going to be put on. Thank you.
Did you have any other questions, Mr. Young?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Cook?
Short, sweet.
Jenny, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, do you have any direct questions for either the applicant, engineer, anyone from the audience?
No, not at this time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. McClure, any questions for the applicant?
Well, I just wanted, I know, been a lot of talk about the fire station there with campers and stuff coming both ways and stuff. What kind of studies have y'all done according to that? Like it's going to be a stop before you get to the fire department, or how's that going to work?
So there's plenty of stacking for the RVs as they come into the camp. So, you know, I can't think of a reason why they would be stopped out on Benfield Landing. They're going to pull up in. The office is a fair bit inside the park. It's inside that first left-hand turn you see right there. Yeah, and we have stacking lanes for RVs as they come in. So again, I couldn't imagine a situation where there'd be anybody stuck out on Benfield Landing. The fire marshal has reviewed the plans. I think specifically with regard to fire access within the development and the water system, but I'm sure he's aware about the fire department there and all that. So, and again, I respect comments about the traffic. I could see the concern, but there's been a number, particularly given everybody knows there's a lot of scrutiny with regard to traffic on this, and I think the traffic study that was done by a traffic engineering firm was heavily scrutinized, and it well below any kind of de minimis value for a drop in the level of service for Benfield Landing Road.
You know, the thing about people being people, and when they're coming in with these, I've got a camper, so I know the issues coming for the camper. And in front of the fire department is going to be anything where there is no blocking the road or anything. I mean, it's like signage is saying, because people are people. I mean, we can't stop everybody from doing anything. But
no, I agree, and I, you know, we can't regulate bad behavior. But we can certainly put some signage there if we think it would help. You know, no parking, no, you know, something along those lines. I think that was something that's easily rectified. But again, I think, you know, to get to the office, they've got to pull in there, pull up in. We've got stacking for 2 to 3 RV units right out there in front of the office. So when they come in, they can stop there to go and check in. And I don't think, and David can probably comment on this, you know, the idea is there's going to be 100 new units coming in on Friday and 100 new units leaving on Sunday. That, you know, some of the people will be, majority of the people will be staying for longer periods of time. So,
thank you.
One thing to touch base on, as I mentioned in the beginning, you have a copy of emails and correspondence from citizens within there. One of the things to try and alleviate part of the traffic concerns, staff reached out to NCDOT, James Evans, for correspondence and a request to be in attendance here tonight, strictly for question and answer from DOT side of the spectrum on why the approval was granted. Staff received no feedback from NCDOT. However, one corresponding email, and if you'll look within your packet, it is the one denoted with a green asterisk about midway through the packet itself. It's dated from August the 7th from an individual that resides there at the lake. And we do have feedback that was put in writing, forwarded to staff from Mr. Evans itself. And just to try and alleviate part of this, I've tried to highlight part of that from my notation, stating from DOT, thank you for your concerns Please be assured that when the plans were submitted for the campground, we worked closely with the developer and engineering firm to ensure that they adhered to all NCDOT policies. Changes were made and redesigns occurred from this review. Currently, the department is working with the engineering firm for a proposed high-visibility crosswalk, advanced warning signs, and caution lights for pedestrians. A traffic impact analysis was performed for the site and no mitigation required inside the area of scope. Motorists coming in from the west have the right-of-way to enter the campground and should not be delayed by oncoming traffic, thus not prohibiting emergency vehicles from entering or exiting the volunteer fire department. That's directly from Mr. James Evans of NCDOT.
That's my question.
I understand that. Crosswalk traffic, pedestrian traffic, that will impede traffic, correct? You have to stop, you can't run over a pedestrian.
Correct. Now, I don't know the extent of what they're proposing or what they're looking at or what that may be involved with what Mr. Brooks has turned and touched on with his presentation where he said they had submitted some stuff in earlier this week. Once again, those are still subject to what may be changing on the ultimate plan. But I just want it to be noted that NCDOT did reply they are addressing those concerns, which I think are commonly stated here by several of the individuals in attendance, as well as the stack of emails that you have in front of you. Almost all of them deal with traffic concerns.
I know it. I just got back from Atlantic Beach, and condos on the other side have to cross the road. They've got a caution. They hit the button. Traffic stops. They cross the road, and then it continues on. And that's a crowded island everywhere. But anyway, that's. I was just down there. That's the reason I asked that question. Okay.
Mr. Love?
Well, Tony asked the question I was going to ask, but you're going to basically do the same thing that Crescent did up there at the lake. Aren't you going to have backup station for the septic situation you're going to have?
Oh, for the dumping station?
Pardon?
Yeah, well, that's correct. There's a dumping station for the RVs as they come in, and that's noted on the plans.
Right.
But the circle. But then they also have full hookups while they're there.
Right. I got you. Okay. Now, what about your dumpsters? You're going to have some dumpsters there for trash and everything, I'm assuming?
Yeah, so they're located at the clubhouse.
Right, that'd be in a location.
At the clubhouse in an enclosure.
Right, okay.
Yes, sir.
One other question.
Sure.
Now, the lady and her husband talked about the barrier between where they live on the hill above the, okay. And could you do some, maybe some buffering there and see how that worked, get with them and kind of.
Absolutely. We spoke before the meeting, and I think, the owners have all along been willing to do whatever it takes to they, really are not interested in being a nuisance.
Okay.
And I think we're more than willing to do whatever additional buffering is necessary to help them out.
All right, I'm going to touch back, if you will just, sir, if you will just hang out for one more second here.
Right.
So the DOT, the work you've been doing with the DOT on the crosswalk there. So is there going to be any way for, if there was a situation with emergency traffic had to get through, and there was pedestrian traffic there, looking at the numbers that have been quoted, I know they can't take that as factual, but we certainly can look at reasonableness, reasonable numbers, what a reasonable person would think we could expect as far as number of people that might be there and crossing at any given time, as they'll be crossing from both sides. Would there be any possibility, as Rick had talked about, to put up something like that would stop that pedestrian traffic and allow ample time for the emergency vehicles to go through? I mean, it may be something simple as a warning light or something of that nature.
Well, that can be triggered off the fire department, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Potentially, yes, sir. I explained what the crosswalk that we propose has, and if there's amendments that need to be made, we can certainly add them. Usually a siren's a pretty good indication to get out of the road. So the crosswalk, as you mentioned, is a high visibility crosswalk. There's a sign there with, a post there with a double-sided sign, say, pedestrian crosswalk at the crosswalk, and of course, striping. There's a signal that will have a flashing light 500 feet on both ends. It's just a caution light, not a stop, but just a caution light.
I have one right down below my house. I'm very familiar with what you're
Yeah.
talking about.
And so it just cautions traffic that there's pedestrians crossing there.
Okay.
So, for the fire department, if there's an additional flashing light or something that can be integrated, that's great. Like I said, usually that siren going off right there, that'll be the first.
Have you met
click.
these little versions of adults that are out here? We call them teenagers.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you seen the thing sticking out of their ears?
That's right, yeah.
Usually that's so loud they can't hear anything.
Okay. Flashing light might get them.
Flashing light probably would get their attention.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what I'm looking at is some way of dealing with that. I make no assumptions about common sense.
Right. Yeah, I'm not familiar specifically with what could be integrated, or there's but certainly willing to do whatever we need to do to try and address that. And I think that might be helpful, particularly given, like, in fact, once the Florida Trails crossing there. That might be
Well, it might be something the county wants to look at to create some lights there. Once they get the signal for EMS or whatever, or fire department. I was a volunteer fireman for years. We had a button we pushed and the signal light started flashing and stuff.
Right, we could add a red light at the
County can
crosswalk.
take care of that.
Yeah, that would be.
Yeah, county's got all kinds of money.
Yep. Is that right?
That red light could be activated from inside, whenever the fire trucks are getting ready to come
Right.
out. They could activate a red light on each end
Right.
to come out. So.
I think that could be
So
done.
there's, in a perfect world, I think an elevated crosswalk would be perfect. Because that would give way to the pedestrian traffic. You would have lack of injuries. I think a lot of the concerns about that type of volume would be alleviated. I understand there's a substantial cost involved with that over the others. So maybe you could speak to that. Have you ever completed or constructed an elevated
No, I have
pedestrian
not.
crosswalk?
I do think it would be, just to get the grades to work out could be a real challenge. Whatever it would have to be, I would assume, like crosswalk ADA accessible, and to get something that flat for that short a distance across something that, didn't have, you don't have 1,000 feet to stretch it out. I think that would be a real challenge.
Let's see here. Do you expect the neighbors, a couple of those that are adjacent to you and actually adjoiners, they have some concerns, and one of those, I didn't hear anybody say this, but a lot of times vacationers or folks with RVs will have four-wheelers. So they mentioned some kind of separation between the property lines, not only to walking traffic, and I can certainly appreciate that. And it looks like from that there's certainly going to be some space there, but people wander, they roam. So could you address any kind of barriers, or will they just be natural barriers that you will have on the property lines where your neighbors are?
Well, I'll defer to the ownership. It's not my money. But certainly, some sort of barrier could be implemented, but like I say, I think that would be up to ownership to discuss, some privacy fencing or something along those lines that would cut off that particular piece of property.
Is ownership able to address that question?
Yeah, Yeah, but, David, you go ahead. Yeah.
Can you repeat the question?
Barriers to individuals that are in your campground encroaching upon or going across into the other property. What kind of markings are you going to have so that they know the boundaries of the campground?
Other than, as Mark mentioned, other than shrubbery and tree lines, that's what we've established so far. We're open to closing it off in a more permanent way. Certainly.
So do you anticipate them, are you going to have recreation opportunities for them to have four-wheelers and drive on the property?
We typically don't permit that,
Okay.
at our parks, and I don't think we would permit it here.
Okay. So the major threat would be people wandering outside of the boundaries of the campground into private residential areas.
Yeah. We would consider something more permanent.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, and trying to answer your question, the ordinance does state where vegetative buffering or fencing is an alternate. Within the plan itself, as you see, it's basically shrubbery, trees to condense and put that, but that could certainly be altered if within the plan that was being proposed. I think the screening for fencing, I think it's 6 or 7 feet. I'd have to look within the ordinance if that was something that was being proposed. One thing that we did look at in conjunction to the neighboring property owner was because if you notice that area back towards there is still left to be primarily within where the septic area is located. As you can see, no designated campsites are set for that portion of the property. So really, the amount of activity should be very limited up in that area as opposed to the opposite side going back towards the nursery. Once again, it doesn't mean people don't roam, but at the same time,
Certainly, it is a concern, so that's the thing I wanted to be aware of. You know, people carry dogs with them, and those dogs tend to roam more than people do. So and they don't know where boundaries are. Has there been a traffic study done for this, you said?
Yes.
Rick's hogging it there. Okay, can you give me an abbreviated, can you give me just an abbreviated summary of that?
Basically, it reiterates a lot of what Mr. Brooks has already designated too. There's very, very little within what statistically or what they're showing within there that there's immediate traffic concerns that approving this would be a halt or a hold. The alterations that are looking to be done, that plan reiterated what DOT took to ultimately put theirs in writing with. Both done by two separate outfits, two separate entities. So my best assumption as part of that is what NCDOT would have used to base their information on, which ultimately is what staff bases ours on.
Could you put your recommendation back up, please?
Certainly.
And just to give you a heads up, Mr. Kirkley, I just want you to looking at your staff recommendation, the totality of that. So you're basing your recommendation upon DOT study and current ordinance. Okay.
As well as the approval from Duke Energy, NC Diener for the soil erosion plan, environmental health for the approval of the septic, fire marshal's office for right-of-way, Duke Energy for their easement that crosses the property through the center. All of those bases and factors, if all those are approved and ready on a finalized plan, that's where the underlined approved site plan will be based from.
Quite a few hurdles to overcome.
Yes. Okay. And it's been ongoing for many months now.
Yes. All right, so one last question for the owner. It was mentioned by somebody else that you create properties and you sell them. Is that your intent to do with this one?
No, we typically hold them 7 to 12 years. Most of the properties that we have today, we have for 15. We have no intention of selling it. Sure, we're going to look at our website that is designed for a wide audience of viewers. We talk about our investment criteria and how we sell and how we buy. This particular park, we have no intention of selling anytime soon.
And how long have you owned this park?
I'm sorry?
How long have you owned this park?
Well, we've owned it for about a year. Less than a year. Yeah.
All right.
We've committed significant money thus far in the expansion as well. So.
Thank you. Board have any other questions? If there be no questions at this time, I'll entertain a motion. Miss Cook, are you there?
Jenny, are you still with us?
I've been told about a minute and a half ago.
Can you hear me now?
Something's
Didn't
pop-
understand.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Jenny?
I think,
Can Jennifer call me right back on the hang up and reconnect?
Yes. Can we have that capability, Scott?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so Jenny, we are going to hang up and dial you right back.
Okay.
it's making a funny racket.
Okay, that's already, I can tell a difference.
Yeah, you sound
Okay, I
like.
can hear you now.
Okay.
Yes.
So now, did you hear, Bradley? We're at the point where we're ready to entertain a motion.
All right. Yes. Gotcha. Jennifer, the last minute or two, just about the last minute and a half, all of a sudden that broke up, and I didn't hear exactly what he said. So he made one statement right before he made that comment that they were ready for a motion, but I missed it.
Okay, kind of a brief summary. Jenny was, Chairman had a question on the completion of the plan, and there was a summary given from multiple agencies that had to sign off for a finalized plan. And then from there, the chairman is now ready for a motion.
Okay. I just lost you again.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay.
I can hear you now.
Okay.
So at this time, I will entertain a motion. Must there be further discussion among the board?
Not for me.
You're waiting for a motion now?
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. If you want to, or any other board member may make the motion.
Well, do you want to make the motion, is that the first paragraph in that?
You
It
can.
looks like that just kind of sums it up, right?
If you can.
Uh,
Need to spell it out, though.
Staff recommends that the approval of the special use permit request as requested for a new commercial campground RV park as set to include the available spaces, park model sites, and the amenities as denoted on the approved site plan. We need to go any further? I'm having trouble reading it. All work and construction of this request, read that for me, guys, I can't read it. My eyes is blurry.
You have a copy of that for him?
Yes, yes, I can.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I had to get to, so I could read it here. So the staff recommends the approval of the special use permit request.
Did you get the,
Can you hear me?
yeah, did you
Yeah.
get the second?
Yeah, I'm reading the whole paragraph now. It said, as requested for a new commercial campground RV park as set to include the available spaces, park model sites, and other amenities as denoted on the approved site plan. All work and construction of this requested use is subject to plan review and the procedures for zoning staff, as well as any additional requirements placed from any county plan review office. All development and activity should meet the standard for both Article 11, Section 1113, and Article 13 of the Burke County zoning ordinance. Okay? Mouthful.
Are you open to amendment to that?
Go ahead.
Small one?
Get a second on that, Ed?
I'm asking him if he is open to an amendment on that.
Say it.
And staff can give me a recommendation on this. I would just like something more speaking to the barrier between the neighbors and I would want it to be occupied dwellings, occupied units, occupied land. There's an occupied dwelling on, something to that nature.
Yes.
Just so that we put that in there. Do you
Okay.
have some suggestions on that, Mr. Kirkley, how we might word that?
What you could turn and do is the motion as it's turned made with additional advances for proper screening next to any residential property as subject to the site plan. And you could make those requirements as you deem fit. If the board wished to turn and have a fence installed adjoining next to residential properties on that side of the property, you could certainly make that within your motion. You could clearly state it, 7-foot tall fence, we want it through here with the addition of shrubbery. You could certainly make that.
Yeah.
Is that agreeable to you?
Yeah.
Okay. Madam Clerk, can you add that to the motion?
Is that for all adjoining properties or adjacent properties or for certain property?
I think that we look at those that are occupied by the owners.
Okay. So then with additions for buffers / screening for adjoining
Properties.
occupied property owners.
Correct.
Okay. Need a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Jenny, are you, how do you vote?
I don't know if you heard me or not, I'm in favor.
No, we didn't hear you, Jenny.
Said aye.
All right.
I'm in favor of the motion.
Okay.
And who was that second?
Tony made the second, and
Thank
then
you.
by a show of hands,
Hear me?
Yes.
show of hands for approval.
The motion passes all. Do we have all
Yeah.
ayes?
Yeah, all
Okay,
five.
so the motion passes.
All right. So with that being the vote carries over 5-1. It is approved by the board.
Wait, I must have missed something. Did you say?
Mario's not here.
Okay,
So he's
thank
a no vote. So 5-1 is the vote calculation. The owner, you will get a approval notice with a summary of the motion and the conditions that are placed there to there. Mr. Brooks, in this situation, what we would turn and look at is from that westerly property line, the advancement of additional screening, fencing, something to mark it from the residential lots that are over there on the western side. Continue to advance with what we've got with NCDOT for the pedestrian walkway, anything that may be for traffic signals, anything through there, that would need to be included to us before final approval is granted. So everybody understand what we're looking at?
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, folks. Appreciate your comments.
Thank y'all.
I was going to ask you something.
Board will turn your attention at this time. We'll give it a moment for the room to clear. And we'll turn our attention to 2012.
That crowd's leaving.
Okay. I was doing really good to see speakers up until about, less than 5 minutes ago, and all of a sudden everybody started cutting down. I don't know what happened, but I heard all the testimony and everything was clear. Actually, it's better than the first case, so, excuse me.
You going to
Hopefully
go?
we don't have any more trouble.
I think
You hear me now?
Yeah, I think when there's a long delay, James, between you and us, I think it starts going over, doing its own thing or something, I'm not sure.
Tell her to have a cup of coffee. We'll be.
I need a cup of coffee.
You did it, come back on?
Well, you're good right now.
Okay.
think we drove,
Hey, Jenny, have a cup of coffee on us.
we drove all over the country.
Tell you what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna steal another water.
See if this one. That's the one, yeah, Middlebridge Road. We drove all over Middlebridge Road and never, ever saw a sign.
Yeah.
Oh, God, it's gonna be 12 o'clock before we get out of here.
But never did see a sign there.
Or Bradley, when Jennifer swears people in, would you tell me, please, how many people were sworn in for testimony?
Okay.
Thank you.
Future ones, I think she was talking about. Future ones, I think she was talking about. Yeah, it's over there. Oh, well, oh, well, yeah. Brad?
Yes.
We went out driving Middlebridge Road the other day. We never saw a sign.
Yeah, apparently the MIA was going today when I got there.
Well, okay, and then another one we went to, where the building's requested, and it's cleared out for, it was like in the ditch, we sat there.
Yeah,
in the ditch. I started to do that.
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Okay.
So then our first case should also have been 521.
Good. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Oreo was.
Okay, go ahead. I'll recommend the next one. I didn't want to hog the show. Let y'all do that.
We have any?
Hey, just pour that candy out, I can hear it.
Yeah, I had, everybody I talked to.
That's what I told you to go ahead and do it.
Lot?
I'll do it next, let Tony do that, okay, the last one. Huh? Oh, yeah. We're gonna invite all the time.
He's in there.
Okay.
What y'all do, lock yourself out?
All these campers stuck in on that road, I'm telling you. If they don't widen that road, water trucks.
I think you said the state's looking at doing that.
They're gonna have to.
They're gonna have to widen that road.
Didn't you say the state was taking
Water.
Huh?
Yeah.
You got water, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, state's gonna have to widen that road up there, cause you got two, that'd be two, really. Cause it's getting real populated up there.
Gentlemen, Jenny, are you still there with us?
Jenny?
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay. What we have remaining, gentlemen, is, ladies and gentlemen, is the last two items for here. What we will turn and do is both of those are in similar fashion. We have no other citizens that are in the parking lot. No one signed up for speaking other than the owners or the applicants. And
You're breaking up, Bradley. You're breaking up, Bradley.
Oh my God.
can you hear me?
I can barely hear you. Go ahead.
Okay.
You got two more cases. I heard that.
Yeah, two more cases, and within the two cases, we have no other citizens or individuals wishing to speak during public comment. So we're going to move forward with the final two. One of the things by statute rule is we do have a time limit for a meeting. So in this situation, we got to be done by 10. So we got two items to move through.
This time we'll go ahead and we'll commence the meeting, a request for a special use permit, construct a 40x60.
Bradley, I can't understand you, dear.
I think the mask is what I do think it's.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's all there.
All right, we're going to go ahead and go through as SUP 2020-12. I'm going to speak quite quickly here. This is a request for a special use permit to construct a 40 by 60 foot accessory structure, residential storage at 5932 Miller Bridge Road, PIN number 27503 7334, Burke County. Will Rocket Taylor is the applicant. This time we'll have a report by the planning department. Mr. Kirkland.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor, if you will, just so we can get the formality out of the way, if you will stand where you are, the clerk will swear both of us in, and that way we'll have that hurdle out of the way.
Okay. Repeat after me. I swear to tell the truth,
I swear to tell the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth,
So help me God.
so help me God.
Thank you.
Mr. Taylor, if you'll have a seat, I'll do my presentation, and then we'll recognize you to come up and do your question and answer. As referenced for this item here, it's a request for a 40 by 60, 2,400 square foot accessory building for 5932 Miller Bridge Road. The applicant is Rocky Taylor. Looking at the screen and information that conducted with your staff report, we'll flow both of these together. Here you have the existing zoning use map. Property zoned as RMU. It does have a single family home and an existing barn on the property. The square footage request exceeds the limitations of what the ordinance would allow for. He has an existing barn on the site, which already exceeds the maximum of the 1,500 limit. This new request is an addition to that, which exceeds it also. So basically, the total square footage under roof exceeds 1,500. Here you have the existing land use map for the property. As referenced, single-family home, if you're looking there at the map, single-family home is located in the back portion. If you drove by the property during your site visit, you would have saw the sign went missing at some point in time during the segue to it. Sign was placed here along the open field. There's a private drive that leads access cutting across here that gets access to Mr. Taylor's property. There's a gate that turns and blocks that. As referenced for accessory structures on a lot greater than an acre in size, the maximum is 1,500 square feet. This request exceeds that, so the board is stuck with the responsibility of issuing approval or denial for that. Here you have the site visit photos. As referenced, there was a sign there at the open field. Open pasture there to it. Property owner's family lives to the driveway and service area located there behind that. Here you have the mailbox and entry location to Mr. Taylor's property coming off Miller Bridge Road. Here you have Miller Bridge Road looking westbound. Once again, field to the right, wooded area across the road. Here you have service driveway. This is the driveway to Mr. Taylor's property. As referenced, there's a gate that typically turns and blocks it if he's not home. But you would drive this access road to the rear of the property where you would find his existing single-family home. Single-family home occupied by the applicant as a residence. Here is the existing storage use that currently exists on the property. According to tax records, it totals at 4,540 square feet. It's an existing structure, looks to be long-standing there on the property and the site, used for personal storage. I came to that calculation based on the information that the tax office had listed for the barn and the lean-to. That gave us that total that is listed for you. Here you have the proposed construction location. As see, a graded area. It's located, if you were looking at the front of Mr. Taylor's home, it'd be located to the left. As you can see, existing vegetation that's looking to be retained towards the side, towards any adjoining property owner. The existing driveway access is located here to the left of the screen. This I brought attention to. This is the closest dwelling, as you can see, through the wooden buffer for where the proposed site would be. For the record and for the board's knowledge, we have had 0 calls regarding this request. None from any adjoiners that anything was mailed out to. In speaking to Mr. Taylor earlier today, he's touched base with this adjoiner, and this individual has no concern with the request looking to be done. Here you have the driveway access to Miller Bridge Road. This would be leaving Mr. Taylor's home. As you can see, heavily wooded, so the building itself, other from that adjoiner in the photo that was previous, that would be the only one able to see it. With that, staff recommendation is for the approval of the special use permit request as for construction of the accessory structure. Asset to measure 2,400 square feet or 40 by 60 in size. Covered structure must comply with the proper setbacks. In this situation, based on square footage, that would be 20 feet from side and rear property lines. All construction of the structure shall comply with zoning and building code standards for construction. Building permit will be required, and proper permits will be necessary from any and all county agencies. With that, that concludes my staff report.
This time, we'll go ahead and hear from the presentation from our applicant, Mr. Taylor.
Evening, gentlemen. Rocky Taylor. I talked to Bradley earlier today. The main concern that I have with building my building is my dad's 90 years old. We've always been home farmers, hobby farmers, goats, horses, miniature donkeys, just something we do for fun. We've always had my garage at Dad's house. Dad told us several years ago that the property, his house and garage, is going to be left to my sister since I've got the other property over here on Middlebridge Road. So if I don't build a property soon, seeing as how he's 90 years old, if I don't build a property soon, then I'm going to be behind the ball if something happens to Paul. So that's the reason that I'm jumping on it, so to speak, now. I have talked to Clifford Williams, the house that joins me in the back. He said the only problem he had with it was he hated to see old timber cut down, but he did like to see a man use his property for what he wanted it for. We've been good friends forever. He went to school with my kids, and we've known him personally since, well, my kids graduated, I guess, sometime in the 90s, late 90s. So all my neighbors that I've talked to don't have any problem, and like I say, Clifford's the only one close by. And I would comment, that's a very nice camera that you've got. You've got some really good pictures of my place. But that's all I'd like to say.
Thank you, sir. This time we'll go ahead and open the public comment portion of the meeting. If you would like to speak to this matter, please come forward, state your name and address, and you will need to be sworn in. Anyone that'd like to speak to this matter? Noting no one has come forth, we'll go ahead and close this portion of the public comment section. All right. Board, you have heard from the staff and the applicant. Will there be a motion?
I make a motion. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion and we approve the special use permit request SUP 2020. My staff's recommendation. Staff recommends approval of the special use permit request. That's to be for a 40 by 60, which includes 2,400 square foot accessory building for a personal storage use at the site. All work and construction of this request use is subject to permits being issued from any required county office. Proper setbacks will need to be achieved with a setback of 20 feet being required from side and rear lot lines.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Jenny, what say ye?
I'm in favor.
Okay, stands approved. So that is a 5 to 1.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we got you, babe.
With the 5 to 1 vote, that stands approved. Mr. Taylor, you will need to see Mr. Kirkley about pulling your permit, and he'll advise you on next steps.
Gentlemen, thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Sorry you had to wait. I hope you didn't wait that long for us.
Business is.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Brad.
Thanks, sir.
Okay, gentlemen, the next item on our agenda is SUP 2013. It's a request for special use permit to construct multiple accessory structures, as to include a 16 by 24 covered patio, a 20 by 40, 800 square foot accessory structure, residential storage at 2295 Antioch Road, PIN number 27262108856, Burke County. Jerry Barron being the applicant. This time we'll hear from planning staff.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Barron, if you can, please stand where you are. We'll go ahead and get sworn in before I do my presentation.
Please repeat after me. I swear to tell the truth,
I swear to tell the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
So help me God.
So help me God. Thank you, Ms. Barron. Have a seat, please. As mentioned, this final item for you tonight is Special Use Permit 2020-13. As noted on the screen, it is for a couple of accessory structures within the application. Normally in this situation, just like with Mr. Taylor, it's for one building. This is a recent purchase by Ms. Barron of the property itself, and within it, she currently has an active permit for a 30 by 40 accessory structure on the property, which was permitted from staff, valid, legal. The addition of these two would put her over the limitations from the ordinance itself. So we'll move forward. On the screen here is the existing zoning district. Property is zoned as RMU. It is the parcel there located in red. The vertical lines that you see are within the airport overlay. It is in close proximity to Foothills Regional Airport. In this particular situation, that has zero relevance for anything. Looking here at the existing land use map, it's an existing single-family home located there center of the screen. If you drove by the property to take an assessment, it's an existing house. Some grading work in preparation for the hopeful approval tonight, I noticed today, has begun. But that's the existing track, I believe a little over 2 acres, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so exceeding 2 acres in size. With that being the case, and it being more than an acre, 1,500 is the square foot limit. As referenced, they have an existing permit for a 1,200 square foot building. This additional footage puts that over the limit. Notes for the board to consider. Property was recently purchased in 2020. They have an active permit for a 30 by 40. Holes Construction is the listed contractor for that necessary job. All combined accessory structures will exceed 1,500 square feet, as I've just summarized in the previous slides. Here we have the property in question, existing single-family home. Looking here, we have Antioch Road looking northbound. This will be looking back towards the regional airport. This will be Antioch Road looking south, looking away from the airport area. Here you have the closest adjoiner. This is directly across Antioch Road, existing single-family home, carports, and the like. Here is one of the requested locations. As you can see, there's an existing concrete pad. In this general area, they're looking to salvage or discard the pad, and a portion of the covered patio is what's looking to go in this general vicinity. Here you have the rear of the parcel, which is the primary use for both the permit that's been issued now, as well as part of the request for the covered camper area for storage and maintenance and upkeep of that recreational vehicle. Clicker won't change. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Bear with me. Here you have some adjoiners there to the rear. A couple of single-family homes located to the back portion of the property, kind of away from Antioch Road. As you can see, a lot of space in between the nearest adjoiner. Given findings of fact within the staff report, given the purpose for the request and the situation involved there, staff recommends the approval of this special use permit request as requested for the construction of both the 16 by 24 covered patio as to measure 384 square feet in size, as well as a 20 by 40 accessory shed measuring 800 square feet in size for the noted 2.47 acre parcel. All structures must comply with proper setbacks. Setbacks in this particular situation, given the square footage of both of those, are just 10 feet from side and rear property lines. All construction of all accessory structures must comply with zoning and building code standards for construction. Proper permits are required from all county departments. With that, that concludes this staff presentation.
All right, this time we'll turn our attention to the applicant. Ma'am, you'll come up and you have the board's attention.
We just bought this house, beautiful home, rock home. It didn't have any garage or any place for us to put our cars or an accessory structure, carport, so we can put it over our fifth wheel camper. Plus the patio, I like to sit outside and there's no cover on there. So I would appreciate putting up these structures. I didn't know I had to talk. And that's it.
Thank you, ma'am. This time we'll turn our attention to the public portion of this meeting and open for public comment. If anybody would like to speak to this matter, please come forth, state your name and address. Noting nobody has come forth, we'll close this public portion. Board, you have heard the presentation of the applicant and of staff. entertain a motion. Unless there are other questions or comments that you would like. Do you have questions for staff or the applicant?
You tell me.
Any questions? What do I need to do?
Read that.
You can make a motion that we
Okay,
approve what the
I make a motion that, that we approve the recommendation of the staff for 2013 and request is for the construction of both a 16 by 24 covered patio as to measure 384 square feet in size, as well as a 20 by 40 accessory shed measuring 80 square feet in size for the noted 2.47 acre parcel. All structure must comply with the proper setbacks. Setback as this time is 10 feet from side and rear property line. All construction of all accessory structures shall comply with the zoning and building code standards for construction. Proper permits for all county departments are required.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Who's making that motion?
Tony?
Can we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
We're waiting on your vote, Jenny. Yes or no?
Okay.
Okay, what is it?
Is that okay?
Yes or no?
Is that a yes or no?
Did you get a second on that motion? I didn't.
Yeah, Robert seconded it.
Okay, Robert second, okay.
What's your vote, Jenny?
What's your vote?
Oh, I approve. I agree.
All right, so it comes down to a 5-1 vote. The measure passes. So Mr. Kirkley will get with you.
You're up from bed right now. It's perfect until the motion came in.
Mr. Kirkley will get with you and advise you on the next steps. But you'll just need to get your permit pulled and you're good to go, I think. Thank you. Sorry you had to wait so long. Enjoy your new patio.
I will.
Just come right here for just a second.
Breaking up, so I can't really hear you like right now.
All right, our next meeting is September the 8th, 2020. I'll entertain a motion that we adjourn.
Y'all bring me a cake. My birthday.
Have a second. All those in favor? We stand adjourned, gentlemen.
Don't forget. Hey,
Ms. Cook?